across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it's a Monday evening. I'm Duncan Barks in for Peter Cardwell. It's the Evening Exchange here on Talk, the home of common sense. I'm here all this week, so Monday through to Friday from 7. Good to have you along. As you heard earlier with Mark, there are so many things to talk about, and we're going to chew them over here on Talk. And my mission, as always, is to get as many of your calls, voice notes and messages on the air. I'll put down a couple of markers here. You need these numbers, 0344 499 1000. You can call that number, we can chat. You can WhatsApp that number as well. That'll be useful. You can text 87222, start your message with the word talk, and also your voice notes 0344 499 1000. It's a place where the United Kingdom comes to talk, and there's so much stuff to go through, and the Peter Mandelson files is the gift that keeps on giving. And this isn't just a political story, it's more than a political story, because I'll tell you what this is about. This is about how the people who are currently running our country behave, and those who think they should have more power than they possibly had at the time when they were sending messages to people. I'm talking about Peter Mandelson, and if you go through some of these files, there's a real sense that even when he wasn't US ambassador, he was literally pulling strings in all kinds of places for all kinds of people. It was genuinely staggering. Now, whether or not you believe that's how modern government operates, I don't know. I'm sure you can let me know. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about the Mandy files and get your reaction. As the show continues as well, we're going to talk about the latest case of a man who was in the magistrate's court. The BBC said, you haven't been paying your licence fee. He said, I don't watch the BBC. And we need to get to the bottom of this because, look, you know, full disclosure, I worked for the BBC for 6 years, all right? I could talk for the next 3 hours about the BBC. I'm not here to completely slag off the BBC, but I do think when we talk about how it is funded, we need to have the honest conversation that the archaic licence fee is no longer fit for purpose, right? The idea you put someone in court, right, and we'll go through the case a little bit later on, someone in court because you thought they were watching the telly, EastEnders, 7:30 on a Monday, and he says, well, it wasn't. And the prosecutor goes, well, we think you were. And he ends up in court. I mean, for watching a TV programme. He says he didn't watch. It is genuinely absurd. So we'll look at that, and there's a ton of other stuff going on as well. It is Talk. It is the home of common sense. And a little bit later on in this hour, we'll get into the whole conversation. And it's a difficult conversation. It's not about having a bash at anyone who is a Sikh, but I think we need to have the honest exchange tonight about the legal exemptions that allow Sikhs to carry a knife and whether or not they should be removed following the sentencing of Henry Nowak's murderer. We'll get into that later. We also have a great panel coming up inside the next 20 minutes. Our debate desk of this hour, Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, Conservative councillor. We'll have him in the studio alongside Sean Hickney. Sorry, that'll be Sean Hickey. Sorry, Sean Hickey from Politics Joe. And we'll chew over some of today's news stories. It is 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your voice notes and your WhatsApps. Text the word talk and your comments to 87222. Let's get into this glorious bit of meat that was chucked our way at around, I don't know, 2 o'clock this afternoon. 1,500 pages of documents released. If you're a journalist like me and the chap we're about to talk to, David Wooding, former editor of the Sunday Express, this is like your birthday and your Christmas all rolled into one. It's just genuinely staggering. You go, where do we start with this? David, good evening.
Evening, Duncan. Good to see you. Yes, it's interesting you say it's like meat. You'd have to sink your teeth into this one, though. It's about 4 or 5 inches thick. It really is a big, big volume. And we'll be raking over this for days, if not weeks. It's very damaging. Every page has got a gem in it, which is just going to inflict more damage on the government.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I don't know if you've had time to go through all of the 1,500 pages. I doubt it, but we already know there are some highlights. There's some fascinating stuff in this release of files. What so far is your main takeaway, David?
Well, I quite like the idea that the government were fighting some kind of battle over welfare between Keir Starmer and the left of the party, and the Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, who says that something along the lines of they seem to have the wrong priorities. They want to know how much money they can spend on giving it out in welfare, not where they can cut it. Now, the background to this, of course, is that the government spends about 330 to 340 billion pounds a year on welfare benefits, and they wanted to make a paltry £5 billion in cuts, but that was all blocked by the backbenchers. And Pat McFadden is clearly exasperated. I can't wait to see how he responds to this. He's bound to be asked, but I suppose he'll just smile and walk on by.
Pat McFadden said something quite interesting in the exchange, didn't he, with Mandelson? Yep. This idea about every meeting I have, it's a case of, quote, who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? These people actually think that way.
Yes, absolutely. It is really damaging, and it will heighten criticism by Reform and the Conservatives that Labour is the party of welfare, not the party of the working man and woman. Don't forget, of course, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, accused Labour of pandering to Benefit Street. I think she'll dust that one off again and give that another outing.
Yes, because we got Prime Minister's questions back in the chamber, haven't we, on Wednesday? So I think that'll be Kemi's line of attack. For you, as a veteran political journalist and newspaper editor, what do you think this says about today's modern politics and how people who are running the country actually operate?
Well, I think the interesting thing is how people exchange information these days. It's the same way that we all live in our lives. I mean, you get text saying, do you want to meet for lunch? You don't ring somebody up anymore. Yeah. And what used to be a walk-by chat in the corridors of power is now a text message, and there's loads of them. The problem is for MPs is that and for journalists as well, I may say, Duncan, because we have to disclose anything by law when asked to do so. So these things all become a matter of public record. And there are dozens and dozens of texts and emails which these MPs have given. For instance, some of it's fairly harmless stuff, but those MPs who'd be going out saying it was a grave mistake of the Prime Minister to appoint Mandelson, we now found out most of them were sending text messages saying, I hope this news is true. What a great appointment. Well done, Peter. Great to have you on board. That sort of stuff. So really, these text messages and emails shows that electronic communication has its downsides as well.
I'm interested in the point that Alex Burghardt, a Tory frontbencher, made this morning about the fact that the Prime Minister's presence is almost non-existent in many of these exchanges. Now, what's your take on this? Is that because stuff has been redacted to try and save his skin, or what? What's going on here?
Well, quite a lot has been redacted. I mean, there's one or two key issues there that we thought some exchanges which have been floating around in the media for months, which don't appear to be in these emails and text messages. Nevertheless, the Chief Secretary to Downing Street, to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, admitted in the chamber earlier that it cost £1 million to have the redactions carried out by civil servants. So a lot of money's been spent on going through this carefully. But by and large, it should be about things which don't affect national security. But I think they sort of move the goalposts a little bit on that when need be. And I think it's very difficult to say that the Prime Minister hasn't been damaged by this. When you get Peter Mandelson saying that the government lacked verve and that it was beleaguered and bereft, it does show that a man who held the highest offices of state himself and was the architect of previous Labour election victories doesn't think too kindly on the man who gave him the job.
No, and let's spend a few moments talking about Mandelson here and your take on the psychology behind how he behaved, because we know he was one of the architects behind the New Labour project, right, along with people like Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Alistair Campbell, all in the mix, etc. And even when he wasn't in elected office, he still was messaging people, WhatsApping people with his thoughts. In some cases, they look like uninvited thoughts. You know, it's interesting that Shabana Mahmood didn't reply to any of his messages. But some people were grateful for the attention and did reply, despite him not holding an official position of office. What's that about? Is this simply a case of they look at this guy, and we know that he's been called the Prince of Darkness in the past, but they look at this guy and think, well, I must react to him, I must take his guidance, because in the past he was a bit of an election winner?
Yeah, he was and still is, up until recently, a Svengali-like figure. People both fear and admire him, and the admiration is basically tinged with fear. They know how powerful he is, and that he has the ear of everybody. When he became prime minister, when the new government was elected, as it were, he was emailing backbench MPs and inviting them out to dinner. He's a terrific networker. He knows everybody. We as journalists had to deal with him. If you wrote something that he didn't like, he'd give you that menacing look. And so in some occasions, I've known him to go straight to the editor saying that reporter, political editor X or Y is not at work very often. He keeps to be down in the bar or doing other things just to try and stick the knife into journalists who are not writing on message for him. So yes, I think that's the same with MPs. I think MPs believe it's better to be on his good side than to ruffle his feathers.
Well, that's an interesting comment, and you don't have to answer this question, but did you ever get any hassle from Mandelson in the past in your various roles as editor and as a journalist?
No, not particularly. I do remember one which was slightly the reverse. I did write rather a complimentary piece about him once when he made a speech at party conference, and he came and sought me out and made a big fuss of me in front of everybody. And I think that was probably just to try and make me an ally, perhaps, I don't know. But he called me all sorts of blandishments galore to try and make me feel like I was a great journalist. But, I didn't fall for any of that, of course.
No, because you're a sound man. Listen, David, a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for your time. Really good to see you. Look after yourself. David Wooding, former editor of the Sunday Express here on Talk. Some messages coming in before we look at this BBC story. This is Joanna in Salisbury, says, Duncan, I spent the last 7 years drilling into my grandchildren, who are now 17 and 14, about social media. Once you have said it, it's always out there and can affect your future employment. Intelligent people obviously didn't get the memo. Are McSweeney's text from his missing/stolen phone in the messages? I don't know is the honest answer. We'll look into that for you. Johanna in Salisbury, thank you for that. And picking up on something I mentioned at the beginning of the show, which we'll talk about in more detail later, about this idea of whether or not legal exemptions that allow Sikhs to carry a knife should be removed. As you know, it's the Kirpan, Kirpan, the Kirpan that Sikhs are legally allowed to carry. It's described as a religious blade. I'm asking the question later whether or not those exemptions should be removed. This is Stephen Fleetwood. He says, how refreshing that the Sikh community repeatedly are coming out to condemn this attack. This was the murder of Henry Nowak. Steve goes on to say, why can't Muslims do the same for the grooming gangs? Shows who's got the moral high ground. And one here from Richard, who says Henry wasn't killed with the little ceremonial knife. He was stabbed with an 8-inch blade he substituted and used on Henry. The murderer's mother hid that knife but was caught and arrested. What happened to her? Says Rick in West Yorkshire. It is Talk, 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApp messages, and also your voice notes. You can text the word Talk in your comments to 87222. 7:15 on this Monday evening. Let's turn our attention to yet another BBC story. A man who ended up in court, and court reports suggested he was stunned by what happened. Now, this guy's name is Kwabena Bonsu, and he was in Highbury Corner Magistrates Court in North London. And he was convicted of a crime that he says he did not commit. Now, we're not talking about shoplifting. We're not talking about carrying a blade. We're not talking about duffing someone up. We're talking about an allegation that he didn't have a TV license to watch live TV. He's 42 years old. He's unemployed. He says it's all a misunderstanding. He claims to only watch Netflix and YouTube, meaning he has no need for a license because he doesn't watch live telly. And cases like this, according to one report, are becoming more and more common. The BBC wants the licence fee expanded, as I'm sure you know, which may mean people who also have to pay the 180 quid annual charge to watch streaming services. That's what the BBC would like. Now, the only evidence against this man, Kwabena Bonsu, is what he told a licensing officer many months earlier on his doorstep in Raynham, in East London, when he said he watches Sky. He was holding his baby at the time and says he was stressed by the officer's questions. In fact, he doesn't have a Sky account, and he said, I only really watch the news reports online. It was one person's word against another. Now, the outcome of this case is kind of interesting. After deliberating in a private for about half an hour. Two magistrates returned to the court. The presiding justice, Mr. Ellenberg, addressed Bonsu in a sympathetic way, says, "I'm afraid we will find you guilty." He went on to explain that the defendant's vague and inconsistent account in court didn't match what he said during the officer's visit, brushing aside the argument that he was confused. They waived a fine because the man's unemployed and handed him a conditional discharge for 12 months, meaning he will only be punished if he commits another offence in the next year. In this respect, he's lucky because in some other cases, people get told they have to hand over 500 quid, but Bonsu was still charged £126 for court costs and a victim surcharge. Now, I know there's a lot of information there, but it's important you understand the context of this. One man going through the mill because apparently this licensing officer didn't believe that, you know, when he started didn't watch live TV. We need to get a view on this. Let's talk to Rebecca Ryan from Defund the BBC. Hello.
Hi, are you okay?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to see you, Rebecca. Thank you for your time. What's your reaction to this slightly convoluted, complex, and in my view, unnecessary case?
I mean, we hear about these kind of cases all the time. A lot of our supporters will email in and say that they've had similar situations. And a big part of the problem with the TV licence and the communications from the BBC around it are that they're really not clear about, well, what can be watched. So unfortunately for this poor guy, he thinks because he watches YouTube, he doesn't need a TV licence. But since the TV licence was expanded to cover BBC iPlayer, it's also something in that piece of legislation that said that if you're watching any live broadcast TV close to as it's broadcast, i.e., you know, on YouTube, you know, when you've got Sky News that is also broadcast on YouTube, and it's got a little buffer time zone, but it is you know, it is still live broadcast, then you have to have a TV license for that as well. So I imagine what's happened to this guy is that he's then been asked, well, what do you watch on YouTube? You know, do you watch Sky or whatever? And you have to really know your stuff in order to not, you know, land yourself in it, or to, you know, to clearly, you know, show that you don't need a TV license. And this is where the BBC is just trapping people, because actually they should make it very clear in their communications what you can watch without a TV license. If they, rather than told people you can't watch this, that, and the other, you know, things like live broadcast TV, most people don't know what live broadcast TV is. They think maybe that's a football match, but it's just any TV that's broadcast to a schedule, regardless of whether that's on Sky or on YouTube or on any channel from around the world. You could be watching a foreign channel. You have to pay a TV license if you're watching it in the UK on your phone. So it's this kind of education piece that people are really missing. And they're falling through the trap here. And what's really shown by this news story is that it is the poor and the vulnerable who are being caught by this time and time again and dragged through the courts. And it's just really outrageous.
So how far are you prepared to go with this? Do you think that some licensing officers deliberately play on people's confusion in order to try and get a conviction?
I don't know. I think that they when they're turning up on people's doorsteps, you know, this guy had his baby in his arms at the time. He was stressed and underdressed, and he's got this official person on his doorstep who's kind of firing questions at him. People will, you know, will fall apart in that setting because they're not 100% sure what they should say or what they shouldn't say. And this is why actually 74% of these prosecutions are against women, because women are far more likely to be at home. They're far more likely to be pressured. Actually, if someone turns up on your doorstep, you don't have to answer them. You certainly don't have to let them into your house. You don't have to speak to them. And so we find that generally men are better at sort of saying, you know, clear off, I don't need a TV license, no thank you, I'm not answering your questions. So it tends to be the vulnerable, people who are very poor, who are, you know, stuck at home, who aren't really socialising very much and that kind of thing, who are dragged through the courts in this way. And it's really an unfair treatment of people.
Yeah, clearly. And a final question for you, and just so our listeners and viewers to talk are really clear, if one of these licensing officers or an enforcement officer, call them what you will, knock at your door, do they have any legal powers to be able to question you in a certain way or to cross your threshold?
Absolutely not. They don't. So the thing is, if they can't see your TV through your front window, then they're not going to have any evidence other than what you say to them. And certainly you don't have to answer them unless they've got a search warrant. But they won't unless they've got some kind of prosecution against you, unless you've had letters saying you're being prosecuted because. So the first visit, no, they don't have any right to come across your threshold. And absolutely, you can tell them to go away and that you don't need a TV license, as long as obviously we're not advising that people break the law, but certainly we would advise that people do their research and figure out as long as you're watching something that is on demand or catch up and is not on BBC iPlayer, you're okay, and you have to be really clear about that.
Rebecca, pleasure to talk to you on this Monday evening. Thank you for your time. That's Rebecca Ryan from Defund the BBC. Here on Talk, our number, if you've ever had a knock at the door from someone saying, you got a TV licence, we don't think you have. Love to get your story on the air. 0344 499 1000. I'm Duncan Barks. It's the Evening Exchange. I'm in for Peter Cardwell all this week. Here at Talk, up next, it's our debate desk. Two top political talents joining us in the studio. Well, that's what it says here. Conservative councillor Matthew Goodwin-Freeman and Head of Politics at Politics Joe Sean Hickey. Here in a few moments' time at Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barks. It's Talk on a Monday evening. Good to have you along. 0344 499 1000. I always give the number out because we talk about so many different things on these shows, and anything you want to pick up on, anything you want to comment on, either as a call or send a voice note, or play them out, or just send a WhatsApp message and I'll read it. 0344 499 1000. You can also text if you're a little bit old school, a battered old Nokia. It's 87222 is the text number. Start your message with the word talk. Our debate desk for tonight features Conservative councillor Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Good to see you. And the Head of Content at Politics Joe Sean Hickey.
Hello.
Gentlemen, welcome. Ton of stuff to chew over here. Let's pick up on what we were talking about a few minutes ago about the BBC. And I won't go through the entire case of this bloke who was in Highbury Corner Magistrates Court for allegedly not having a TV licence, even though he said that he doesn't watch live TV. Let's have the conversation about the BBC. And full disclosure, I used to work for the BBC for 6 years. And I think it does some things very well. I think it does some things particularly badly. I think it's not had a good 3 or 4 years, but I think the thing I want to get to here is about how it is funded in the future. All right, now look at you two fresh, young-faced, gazelle-like looking chaps.
Very kind of you.
Compared to my slightly battered, wrinkled, slightly flushed face, a man of middle age. I grew up with the BBC licence fee and the idea that that's what you paid, right? Because I come from a generation where we had, ready for this, 3 TV channels.
I remember those days.
And look at the history books. And then in the early 1980s, they launched a 4th one called Channel 4. It was like a broadcasting revolution. So I've grown up with it, but you guys are younger. Are you what? Are you both Gen Zers?
I think I'm the cusp of Gen Z, excuse me.
I have no idea. What's 1999?
Well, they're early 30s.
Yeah,
What's that? Is that millennial or is that Gen Z?
Millennials in your 30s, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, right, so you're both Gen Z.
Oh.
According to our
And
top
it
team
means
researchers next door.
You can be whatever labels you
Gen
want.
Z, you're always very tired, aren't you?
Yeah,
very tired.
Very
So
hard.
let's get into this. So I have a daughter, and she's in her early 20s. She would never. The idea of a license fee to watch something on the telly or to access a media platform is just alien to her. Do you think, and I'll start with you, Sean, if I may, do you think the license fee can survive?
I think it should survive, whether it's in a system of an annual payment is one thing or the other. I would say that countries that don't have a strong public service broadcaster, some of the most iffy, for want of a better word.
What's your definition of iffy, though?
Well, I mean, you look at the American system, right? You're talking in the 1970s, 1980s, where they decided that people like PBS were not going to get most of the money that the American government were going to give to national media organisations. And now you have a system where you've got your CBS, MSNBC, your Fox News, all of these organisations that have one political slant or another. Now, one thing that's fantastic about the BBC is it annoys both left-wing and right-wing people with accusations of bias. Well, some more than others.
Well, let's dig into that for a second.
Partiality at the BBC, I don't.
All right, Matthew. Let's as our prescribed right-winger this evening. Why would the BBC annoy you?
Well, for me, it's just the fact that the BBC is no longer what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be impartial. It will tell you the news and let you come up with the opinion.
Right.
But over the last few years, especially the last decade, when everything with Brexit, Trump's first term, everything, it's become this opinion mouthpiece that, because they are protected with this idea of being impartial, and they're not biased, it gives them that scope to be biased. And the problem is there has been a track record now of incidents with the BBC where in any other organisation, heads would roll, management would be fired, or frankly, things would get shut down and they'd have repercussions. And the BBC seems to be this above that jewel. Now, it is an incredible service. It provides a massive service around the world for the for Britain as a company. It is our flagship, but it has to therefore lead by example. And when the BBC can't even follow its own rules, its own charter, and then goes after people for not paying a licence fee based on he said, she said, that's ridiculous. It makes a mockery of the whole thing.
Okay, so how would you fund it?
I think we need to move to a model where it's frankly got adverts. I don't mind when the adverts come on, because it's the time I can either go to the loo, make a cup of coffee, or put some food in the oven.
Let me tell you what the counter argument is to adverts is like stations like us here at Talk will go, hang on a second, we're funded by commercials, right? The BBC have a great network of transmitters, more powerful than anyone else's. If you start saying have some adverts, that's going to damage the commercial broadcasting sector. That's not right.
Well, this is where we need to look at it, but frankly, it's not down to taxpayers to pay for something that then they don't use or don't contribute, and we get the punishment.
Would you
especially with them wanting to now roll it out to streaming?
I take your point. Would you approve of the BBC being funded by some kind of government grant in order to have some form of public service broadcasting? Because
the problem with that you're going to get is that government grant can always be cut, increased, made bigger, made smaller, by the government of the day. So you could end up saying, right, we'll give you, I don't know, this amount this year, and then a new government comes and says, right, we'll give you 20 times more because we'll scrap this and scrap.
And there's no consistency, and it might become a political decision. Sean, as our, are you right to be classed as left of centre? I mean, I don't want to give you a...
You could call me that.
Can I call you an ardent lefty?
You'd also call you Sean.
You could call me a lefty loon if you like.
So as our resident lefty loon this evening, what does the BBC do to annoy left-wingers then, from your perspective?
Sorry,
what does the BBC do to annoy left-wingers?
Well, I mean, you could look at the Corbyn years of the Labour Party, where things like Newsnight had that famous Kremlin photograph of Jeremy Corbyn with the Russian hat. There was an instance, I think last year, wasn't it, where they had commissioned a documentary for, I think it was called Doctors Without Borders, that eventually was broadcast on Channel 4 because of Is
that the one that was narrated by...
It was narrated by
the son of
Hamas. Well, it was still on British television later on, and just as well it was, because it was cutting-edge journalism in the first place.
Everything with Bob Bennett. You know, Glastonbury, everything that's still being on BBC
Well,
iPlayer.
can you look at that and say that is the fault of the BBC?
Well, yes, it absolutely is. Not that he did it, and my opinion is that he should have faced punishment. If anybody else said it, they would have faced punishment. But the fact that the BBC didn't have a delay, so aired it, and then still had it on iPlayer hours later, despite having such a massive crew there at Glastonbury. I put it again, If it was anybody else, it was in any other walk of life, you'd lose your job, you'd lose your income, you'd be reprimanded, you wouldn't be a thing anymore. Whereas now, we see in the hate marches that happen on the weekends, people still chanting death, death to the IDF, because they know they can get away with it, because he has now. And I would plant some of that at the BBC, who should have called it out, who should have brought it off air immediately, and should have made sure it wasn't on iPlayer at all for anyone to be able to use.
Well, let's discuss this. Sean, do you think the BBC is inherently biased in a certain direction? I mean, there's some quite serious charges there made by Matthew. No?
I think when we're looking at an organisation where the former chairman was affiliated to the Conservative Party as well, I don't think you could really say that it's affiliated in a left-wing slant or a right-wing slant. As I said at the very beginning of this, the fact that both of us sat here now have our own reasons to say, well, it could possibly be interpreted as being biased on this side or biased on that side. I think that's a decent position, because we're also only talking at the moment about news. The BBC makes fantastic documentaries, fantastic television shows, makes fantastic children's shows, educational for the entire world. The best export of this country, frankly, is the BBC World Service. Some of the worst served countries in the world, some of the worst the questionable regimes across the world, quote-unquote democracies. Where did their people get their news? The BBC World Service.
You can argue that the World Service is a tremendous soft power, and I've worked there, and you can argue that the government should use it, and in fact the government should fund it, because what happened is under George Osborne, he pulled the funding for it and it got picked up by the licence fee, which then leads me on to this, and Matthew, I think I'm clear where you are on this. Sean, you clearly believe there's still a place for the BBC. Absolutely. Is it right that we're having a conversation this evening here on Talk about a man who ended up in a magistrate's court because allegedly they said, well, you were watching TV, and he said, I don't watch live TV. I mean, what, is it really, is this the best use of court time?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. I mean, a person that is getting into court to have a he said, she said argument with the TV licence inspector is frankly ridiculous.
I have personal experience of this. My missus and I have just bought a property. We're doing renovations to it at the moment. We don't have a TV. We don't have anything. We're not living in the place. It's under construction. And we were getting letters and letters and letters from TV licensing saying, we think you have a TV, we think you have this, we're going to come round, we're going to come visit. I would write back on the letters and stick them back on the post saying, we don't even have a TV. We don't even have walls. We don't even have anything. You're welcome. You're welcome to come to this house that is empty and demolished, and it's being. You're welcome to come round, but we've not even got a kettle, so I can't even make you a cup of tea. And they finally, after 8 months of pushing and pushing back, finally went, okay, we appreciate that. We won't. We'll take you off our records for this year and be in touch again next year.
I've got a couple of messages here regarding this. This is from Yule in Ballymena, who says the TV licence is excellent value for money. I would sell my house and car to pay for it. Not entirely sure that's a genuine message.
Can you pay mine?
Pay mine as well. This one here from Suze, who says, why is the BBC wasting taxpayer time and money on court cases? They need to go to subscription. Problem solved. Of course, they don't want to do that because so many people won't bother. It's scandalous that people can be persecuted even though they never watch BBC content. And this is Becca, who says, I got taken to court, I got took to court, local court dismissed it. Then 1 year later, arrest officer came back from a court counties away. I said, take me back to your court, so they did. Local magistrates dismissed it again, says Becca. Listen, keep your messages coming in. If you've ever had BBC hassle regarding them saying, or a licensing officer, you don't have a licence fee, and you know, well, don't watch the thing, let me know. 0344 499 1000. It's Talk on a Monday evening. More from our debate desk next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Shush! Stop talking. It's the BBC debate. It's the what are we doing? The debate desk here on Talk on a Monday evening. If only you could hear and see some of the things that happen when the microphones and cameras aren't on. I'm Duncan in for Peter through until 10 o'clock tonight. We'll do a couple of more messages here about the BBC. We've been talking about the licence fee, and then we'll move on to the Mandy files. This is Clayton in Dartford, who says, "Does your guest Sean think the photo of Corbyn was photoshopped, or did Magic Grandad go to Moscow and hang around the Kremlin wearing a hat with a star on it?"
Was he
I think
capped by the BBC in Moscow? Well, that was the whole point of it, wasn't it? That he was photoshopped in... OK.
Made with AI.
All right. And this one here from MJ in Staffordshire. The BBC could have educational health adverts, which would surely not impact the commercial sector. I am 2 months older than you, Duncan. How do you know how old I am? Did I say how old I was?
Is it on Wiki?
I just said I was an old bloke. Middle-aged bloke. Hurtling into oblivion. Duncan, never mind the word battered and wrinkly descriptions. If I can WhatsApp, you can too, says MJ from Staffordshire. What's he on about?
Should we just spend the next hour talking about
how young Duncan
is?
Vibrant, vivacious.
Duncan babyface bowl.
I have a very good moisturising regime every night.
Right.
Okay.
That I've obviously neglected to do for a while. Listen, keep your BBC messages coming in. 0344 499 1000 for your WhatsApps, your voice notes and your calls. Let's talk about the Mandelson files. I mean, released just after, 2 o'clock this afternoon. 1,500 pages of documents relating to the disgraced peer's time as US ambassador made public. I was talking to the former editor of the Sunday Express, David Wooding, about this earlier. I mean, this stuff, there's a lot of stuff to pick over here. I'll start with you, Matthew. From what you've seen and heard so far, what do you think, and you're a serving councillor as well, so what do you think this says about the current state of British politics, how senior politicians and the government communicate with each other?
Well, it's very concerning because it seems like WhatsApp is the way the whole country runs. Yeah. And then you can mysteriously lose your WhatsApp messages, lose your phone, wipe it, clear it, and there you go. Important information is completely lost. I'd also challenge anyone to find me a phone that can't be hacked by someone or some state or even some teenager in their bedroom nowadays with how good people are with technology. Yeah. The Scandalson files is what I call it, Peter Scandalson. It's going on and on and on. Has anyone read all 1,500 pages yet today? Because I gave it a good try, but not there yet. It's just dreadful. This government were elected on one word, change. One face, Keir Starmer. And instead, it has been nothing but disaster after disaster, crisis after crisis, scandal after scandal. They said they would be better. They said they'd be cleaner. They said they would turn the page, and they haven't. And Peter Mandelson is going to become an icon of destroying trust
but
in
Matthew,
British politics.
let's not forget the last 2 or 3 years of Conservative government, which was literally like a bin fire,
and
right? Which is why, hang on a second, which well, not just a kicking, which is why Labour got in with a majority of over 140.
Absolutely, and they can't even use it. They can't use it to bring in mild reforms of the benefit system, which is ballooning to 400 billion a year. They can't use it to stop things like the ridiculous Chagos sellout. They can't do things in this country despite having the biggest majority for generations. So no, I'm sorry, but we got a kicking at the general election. That's it. But Labour have still got, 3, 4 more years till we'll have a general election? What state is this country going to be in if they can't even get stuff through now after their shortest honeymoon period I think anyone's ever seen, and this is now dragging on and dragging. This is Labour's Partygate. This is Labour's Partygate.
Do you think it's that bad?
Easily. Right. This will bring down, along with the by-election Burnham, this will bring down Keir Starmer.
Is that what they're calling them now?
Well, it's...
By-election
Burnham.
Yeah,
absolutely. Not ready, Rayner.
Sean, let's get your view on this, because when Labour came into government in July 2024 with that whopping majority, that some might argue loveless majority, but it's still quite a stonking majority. A lot of commentators on the left, I don't know if you had this view, when, oh, look, it's great because the adults are back in charge, right? These Mandelson messages, these files clearly show that there's not a great deal of adulthood knocking around. What's your assessment of what you've heard so far?
Well, I think on my end of the far, far left, there was a lot of conversation about the loveless nature of it. I mean, a lot of the a lot of the red wall that Labour had gotten back in 2024, you look at who came second in a lot of the places and what the margin of the victory was as well. A lot of reform second places there that I think you need to look out for in 2029. But with the Mandelson files, I think it's just the smell that doesn't go away. I wouldn't go as far as Will in this, that when you look at the previous releases of the Mandelson files, when you're looking at the vetting process that we had the last time out, and how it wasn't even the association with Jeffrey Epstein that was the reason for recommending against the appointment. It was to do with the relationship with Chinese and Russian businesses. So I think when you look at what's happening here, this is kind of, we've become used to this from, as you say, from Partygate, from things like that this is how people interact with each other in government. When you've got, I'm fascinated by the conversations between Pat McFadden and Peter Mandelson. It just seems to go on
hang on, where's my favourite quote? Who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? Which is what McFadden was saying.
That's what they're doing.
Hang on a second, this is what McFadden was saying to Mandelson about all of the meetings he sat in with Labour politicians.
But I think there's an aspect to that, that like, if you're looking a little bit deeper, there's a sense of dejection in it. Like, I mean, Pat McFadden isn't a spring chicken. He's been around the Labour Party for a very long time. So I think when you see how he interacts with an old guard like Peter Mandelson and how it doesn't really seem like there's much going on between the ears of this Labour government, and I have to sit here and take
take the brunt of it. Matthew, we know there's this Labour...
Not me, Pat McFadden.
No, so sorry for you. So sorry.
Sorry if you feel like a punch
Get the
bag.
small violins out
Pat
for the Labour government.
Matthew, we know that there's this Labour psychodrama that's taking place at the moment. You know, all these people want to be leader. There's not really yet an official leadership battle going on. Yet we know there are people kind of positioning themselves on the peripheral. One of those is the former Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Now, he was, you know, very matey with Mandelson.
Absolutely.
Do you think that what we've seen with this latest batch of files, does that damage him as a potential replacement for Starmer?
Well, I'm pretty sure that, you know, Wes Streeting has deleted anything to do with Peter Mandelson from his social media. The benefit is that most of us kept the receipts and we still have the screenshots of it. Those WhatsApp messages don't seem to disappear. I think this is very damaging for Wes Streeting and for whoever becomes the next Prime Minister, because even if it still remains to be Keir Starmer, because this is not going to go away. This is the latest release of files. But there are still more. Remember, there are lots of files that the Metropolitan Police have asked the government not to release. That one day will be released. So one of the questions I think the Labour government needs to be saying to the police is, actually, how long is this going to take? Because if this drags on another year, that's 3 years we will have been talking about the Mandelson scandal.
By a million cuts.
It will keep going. And by that point, you will be thinking, well, actually, a general election isn't far away. Actually, it's about time to get rid of this government. So this is going to go on and on for them, no matter who's in charge.
All right, and Sean, your take on how damaging these files, these messages may or may not be for Streeting?
Well, I mean, Wes Streeting also published a lot of these text messages for Sky News.
He tried it on the front foot, didn't he?
To give an insight into how politically savvy this man is, that he thinks that he'd come off well by publishing.
Are you not a fan then, Sean?
I mean, I wouldn't...
Was the resignation not enough for you?
I think if you're looking at someone who has a long and storied relationship with one of the most notorious paedophiles in the entire world, and has...
This is Epstein.
Epstein,
just for the record.
The nickname the Prince of Darkness has had multiple resignations from his governments of the past. I think the fact that you have any correspondence with this person is jarring,
do you know,
to say the least.
I'm so glad you said this, okay? I mean, I've worked in the peripheral politics in the past, but it just seemed to me it's like if you're Starmer, you don't need to assess this guy. You just look at his past.
Exactly.
You've hit the nail on the head, Sean. You look at the fact that he's known as the Prince of Darkness. You know that in previous Labour administrations he had to be sacked twice. I mean, the evidence was pretty clear to see before you decided to make him US ambassador.
But when you look as well at the other names within the files this time out, you're looking at like Ed Miliband, Darren Jones, I think Keir Mather gets a mention at one point as well. There's a lot of Labour MPs that get a message from Peter Mandelson and don't reply to it. They know what the smell is.
Shabana Mahmood, apparently, just did not even reply to anything she's not the only one. There's so many parts of these files where it's multiple texts that he sends to somebody that they don't reply to.
Left unread. But this goes back to judgment. It goes back to the judgment of the Prime Minister, who, as we all are finding out reading through this dossier of books, was left out of it effectively, barely mentioned at all during the files today. Are you seriously telling me and the British public to believe that Keir Starmer didn't know, didn't speak to, didn't write or didn't ask anyone about anything to do with Peter Scandalson? Are you really telling me that? But then turns up to make that speech saying he's our good friend, to us we just call him Peter.
Yeah, I know. Let's just do a couple of messages before we pause regarding the BBC, because this is really, we lit a flame on this inside the last 45 minutes or so. This is about the guy who ended up in court in Highbury Corner Magistrates Court for apparently watching live TV and not having a licence. He said, well, I don't watch it. And I went through the court system earlier. Some great messages coming in from people. This is Ivor, who says, I'm Jewish and I pay my licence fee, but I constantly think, why should I finance an organisation which is blatantly anti-me and anti-my people? This is Sue's. Sue says, so you can now shoplift up to 200 quid a day, potentially 73 grand a year with impunity, but watch something on YouTube once that has zero to do with the BBC, and you can end up in court and possible prison. This country is insane, says Suze. And there is one more here. Bear with me, a lot of messages coming in. This is Paul in Southampton. He says, Duncan, I can confirm what your guest said earlier about the TV licence. I had a knock at the door a couple of months back. Guy with a lanyard round his neck said he was from TV Licence Authority. He asked if I had a TV. I said no. He said, so you don't watch TV? Again, I said no. He then said, do you mind if I come in and look? I said no, and shut the door on him.
Good on you.
At the time he called, my licence had lapsed by 3 months, and the fear he may come back with a warrant. I went out the next day and bought one. I've been here 6 years, and despite always having one, apart from my 3-month lapse, I've been sent a threatening letter every month. Got to be about 60 now, says Paul in Southampton. Keep your messages coming in. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Duncan Barks. This is Talk, the home of common sense, from Monday evening. 0344 499 1000. You want to pick up on anything that you hear, WhatsApp us, call us, or send a voice note. And if you're old, MJ, I can't remember where you were messaging from, you can still text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Our debate desk continues. We have Conservative councillor Matthew Goodwin Freeman and head of content at Joe Politics, or rather Politics Joe, Sean Hickey. Let's move on to this story that is a tragic story, because we're talking about a young man who got murdered in Southampton. His murderer, Vikram Digwar, has been jailed for life, got to serve a minimum term of 21 years. Now, one of the things I want to look at regarding this, and there was some debate earlier today on Talk about whether or not the sentencing was harsh enough, but we have to look, I think, at this fact of the case. And the fact is that the man in question, Vikram Digwar, who stabbed Henry Nowak to death, used a blade. It's been classed as a Sikh blade. In the world of Sikhism, it is known as a kirpan. It's a religious blade, and you're allowed to carry one if you're a Sikh. You get an exemption, right, under the knife laws in this country. And what I'm interested in is the Police and Crime Commissioner of Hampshire and Isle of Wight. This is Donna Jones, who's already talked about the investigation into her into the police force and their conduct during this arrest. She's also said, as Commissioner, she intends to write to the Prime Minister to request a national review of the laws concerning the carrying of bladed articles under religious exemptions. Now, I'm very clear about this. I've in my life, I've known a couple of Sikhs, fantastic blokes, have no issue with anyone who's a Sikh. However, we need to have this conversation because clearly it is relevant regarding this case. Matthew, I will start with you. Do we need to review these legal exemptions?
I never even knew anything about a kirpan until this happened. I think this has been a massive educator for people, and it is a tragedy as well. Someone has had to lose their life where the assailant lied when the police arrived so that they arrested the victim and he was left bleeding out. That's the tragedy of all of this. Someone's had to lose their life for us to now be understanding of this. I don't know what the government are going to do. They could change the law tomorrow to say, right, no, these exemptions no longer exist. You can't have them. You can have imitation ones, perhaps, fake ones where actually it doesn't open and it's not shut. It just looks, because it's not for the knife to be out. It's the holding of the knife in the case. But no one knew about this until this has happened. I think that's a worry, because how many other things, how many other exemptions, how many other tragedies are there out there which we don't know about until someone else has to lose their life?
But you think the law needs to change?
I think there's got to be a change in this.
Sean?
I think certainly the Gurdwara barred Digwa in the first place. I think at
warning
that point, then the state needs to step in. Maybe there's a conversation with Prevent in the community to then say, are we going to review whether this person, is it even in the religious scripture that you're allowed to take the kirpan away from somebody? I did actually know that the kirpan was part of the Sikh tradition, and I believe that the reason why Sikhs carry a kirpan is because of the tradition of service within the religion, that it's to actually defend other people should they get into trouble. Now, with this person in particular, I think that the key to all of this is that it could have been caught earlier and something could have been done a lot earlier. Now, I've been on here several times, countless times, where we've talked about Prevent, the funding of Prevent, the under-resourcing of Prevent. And I think particularly with conversations like this, there's definitely a role for Prevent to be played that it was just missed.
I'm going to just use the final few minutes and thank you both for your thoughts on that, because I'm keen to get your view on a slightly different story regarding, and I don't know if you've experienced anything, abusive passengers on aeroplanes who could be put on a national blacklist and prevented from flying with any airline under a new government proposal. So first off, I don't know when either of you last flew anywhere. Have you been on a plane with people who have been boozing and kicking off?
I think about, was it 2 weeks ago? I was on a plane with boozers, yeah. It wasn't necessarily a boozy trip, but I think when people get to a Friday, it gets to 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the airport, there may be too many drinks imbibed.
I think it's that part of common sense. You know, I've been on flights before where you get quite a few drinks. You go to the pub beforehand. All that sort of, like, it's part of the starting the holiday early. But you've got to take some personal responsibility at the end of the day. You can't be stumbling onto the plane and ordering more and being rowdy and difficult. At that point, sorry, you're causing a disruption. You're actually a safety issue as well for the passengers and for the safety of the aircraft. If it means that you get blacklisted from one company, but then, hey, you could go and book with another one straight away, maybe there should be this list where companies can choose, actually, do you know what, I don't want this person on my flight. We've got to start taking a bit of personal responsibility.
But I think you've hit the nail on the head. It is ultimately about self-responsibility.
There can't be a law for everything.
Because there are a couple of things here. First off, you know, the margins on airlines ain't great, okay? They don't make a massive amount of money on every flight. They certainly do on long-haul flights, but not short-haul flights. So actually the cash they might get from serving, you know, someone a beer or gin and tonic is probably significant. But also, and I'm going to put this out there, so if you disagree with me, 0344 499 1000, I believe it is a British person's right to start their holiday at Gatwick or Heathrow in the Wetherspoons with a full English and a couple of pints of beer.
That's literally what I did last summer. We had early morning flights and you're there at 6 or in the morning having a spoons and a beer. It's great.
I don't think that's unreasonable. And, you know, and it's not about necessarily having to have a drink when you're not working or you're on holiday or off duty, but for some people, it's a significant start to their holiday.
Part of their holiday.
And I think if you start going down the route of going, well, we need to have this blacklist and say, well, these people shouldn't be allowed to fly because they can't behave, you then start saying, well, I recognise that this is a massive problem. And if you allow this blacklist to happen, you start going down this this path. You know, it's a thin end of the wedge argument, isn't it? But people just go, well, let's just ban alcohol.
Well,
on planes.
thank goodness Hannah Spencer isn't the Transport Secretary, otherwise she probably would. No, you're completely right,
Just
Duncan.
for context, she's the Green Party MP who got in Gorton and Denton, who wants to stop people
first
drinking in
PMQ
Parliament.
was talking about drinking in
It was a
Parliament.
Politics Joe exclusive as well, might I add.
Oh, well done.
That was
Good plug.
the first
Well done, you.
the first line was for Politics Joe, yeah. But I think as well, it's worth mentioning that the beginning of this conversation came from Michael O'Leary with his 2-pint policy a couple of weeks ago. I think it's worth thinking about how often one goes to the airport, right? But also how much time you as an ordinary Brit would spend in the airport pub. I know me myself, I can't, I'm like a magnet towards the pub when I get to the airport. But I think
We're going to get on very well. Well, that's why we've gotten very well
We
tonight.
should probably go on holiday together.
we probably would, but I think myself and Will, if we were sat down in the airport spoons in Gatwick or Stansted, and of course other pubs are available in those airports, there would only be enough time for about 2, maximum 3 pints. It depends on how quickly you drink, of course. But I'd only fit in 2 before I get to the gate.
So how do we make this, before I ask that question, how do we make this work? Sean, what would be your tipple when you got to the airport, just out of interest?
Well, it depends on the time of year.
Okay,
if it's
go
around
on.
Christmas time.
Right, let's get Christmas.
So something heavy for Christmas time, it would be a pint of Guinness, maybe 2 of them. Your summer holiday, I think it's a pint of lager. On the way back from the holiday, I've often been found to have a pint bottle of Bulmers or Magners or whatever it is in the particular place I'm in.
Matthew, what would your tipple be? Whatever's going.
Whatever. If we've got a percentage, I'll drink it.
So long as
some
it's
sort
wet.
of Stowford Press or something like that, cider.
Whatever someone's buying you.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
seriously, just for the final couple of minutes, how do we tackle this? Because, you know, I mean, I've seen it at Gatwick Airport, stag parties, well tanked up, getting on the plane. You just think, you know, the staff on that plane, they're going to put up with them. Right? How do we sort it out?
I think when you go to an airport, everything has to be bought with a boarding pass, right? If you are in the WH Smith or whatever, you have to show your boarding pass. Maybe you do something like that in the spoons at the airport.
It's the only place in the airport
each person can only buy X number of drinks. But then again, if you're travelling as part of a large party, if each person's allowed, say, to buy 3 drinks, go right up, get into the queue. Each of you are buying 3 drinks for everybody. You know, that's where the problem comes. But personal responsibility. There can't be a law for everything. Take responsibility. Stop being an idiot. Get on the flight. Make sure you're early enough. Give enough time to get through security and enjoy it.
I mean, there's a lot of things that you can't do in an airport as well, remember. You can't bring 100 mils of anything through on your own.
I think that's changing, though, because there's new scanners
well,
and
there's
stuff. They're going to
some
change
airports, and it depends on if you're in the right queue and all this kind of thing.
Got the right passport and all of that.
Yeah.
All of that. Listen, Matthew Goodwin Freeman, Conservative Councillor, thank you for joining us. Good to have you in the studio. Sean Hickey from Politics Joe, good to have you in as well. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. And some nice civilised debate.
Let's book a holiday.
Yeah,
Why not?
Why not?
You know, let me know when you're off and I'll drive you to Heathrow. You're watching Talk and you're listening to Talk. It's a Monday evening. It's the Evening Exchange. I'm Duncan Barks. I'm here through until 10 o'clock tonight, in for Peter Cardwell. You are in for a big treat after 8 o'clock. Do not go anywhere. Conservative MP Esther McVey on this show, because there's been a debate in Westminster Hall today regarding the mandatory collection and publication of certain child sexual offender data. Thousands of people signed this petition. This petition is basically saying, look, you know, if someone is a child sex offender, we have a right to know their ethnicity, their immigration status, their nationality. We'll get to that in a few moments. 0344 499 1000 for your calls on that. Esther McVey, Conservative MP, our guest next, here at Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. I'm Duncan Barks in for Peter Cardwell. All this week on the Evening Exchange here at Talk, the home of common sense, Monday through to Friday nights from 7. Really good to have you along. Hope you've had a decent day. If this is your first opportunity to kind of just chew over what you've heard on Talk with the headlines, some of our callers, some of our messages, you're more than welcome to get involved. 0344 499 1000 for your WhatsApp messages. I will read them out. You've heard me read them out. You can also send voice notes to that number. We'll play them out. We can have a chat, like a real live chat that Gen Z is unable to do. Call me, 0344 499 1000. We'll chew stuff over. Or if you want to be a little bit old-fashioned and text, 87222 is the number. Start your message with the word talk. Ton of stuff we're chewing over here, including whether or not you think booze, alcohol should be banned in airports or on airlines, because apparently some people are looking at having a blacklist for people who get a little bit rowdy because they've had too much to drink. Your thoughts on that? The BBC licence fee, once again, dominating much of our chat this evening, following a guy who was in a magistrate's court. He was there. He said, I wasn't watching live TV. The licensing officer said, well, I think you were. You know, and I just find it staggering in the 21st century that we're wasting court time over someone who says, well, I wasn't watching the TV, and someone else going, well, I think you were. I mean, it's archaic. And the wider conversation about whether or not the BBC licence fee is fit for purpose. We're looking at all of that as well. A bit of chat about the Mandy Files. Can we call them the Mandy Files? I think we'll call them the Mandy Files. Your reaction to this. What does it say about modern day politics? What you've been hearing on our news bulletins. You know, the disgraced peer, Peter Mandelson. All these messages to people. I mean, he really was a player, wasn't he? Massive political operator. What does that say about modern day politics? We're looking at that amongst other things as well. But I want to welcome to the Evening Exchange this evening the Conservative MP Esther McVeigh, also columnist with the Daily Express. We'll find out, Esther, what's in your column tomorrow in a few moments' time. But first off, I wanted to get your thoughts on a debate that took place earlier today in Westminster Hall regarding the mandatory collection and publication of certain child sexual offender data. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. Great to be with you. Yes, I've just come out of that debate. It was up to a 3-hour debate, and it's still the failure of the collection, the routine collection of data for nationality, ethnicity, immigration status of child sex abusers and also rape gang abusers too. And people want to get to the bottom of this. And, you know, you should not fear data. The more data you've got, the more accurate it is, the more patterns you can sort of see, the more you can work with police to find a solution and get and arrest perpetrators and put them behind bars. It is the failure to connect data where you cannot see the problems. When you see the problems, you can put structures in place to stop things happening again. So this was the big debate. Over 260,000 members of the public had asked for this debate because they said, we are horrified that Labour, the government and various institutions are running away, hiding away from these questions on ethnicity. Why are they still doing that? As well as the Labour government, although we've been promised a rape gang inquiry, where are they up to? So it was a, you know, as you can imagine, it was a moving debate. It was a fiery debate, but really it was the public who's forced it on the Labour government to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, and there's a lot of public interest in this, and rightly so, because I would have thought, if you hadn't followed this issue, most Talk viewers and listeners would have thought, well, surely they must be recording this kind of data about the immigration status of an offender, or indeed their ethnicity, or their religious background, or whatever. And of course, that wasn't happening. It took this massive petition to start getting the debate taking place, which you were part of earlier today. Let me just get your view on this. Do you think the fact that this has not been happening was a political decision on behalf of Labour?
I think for a long period of time, and whether you call it political correctness, people were frightened to raise certain subjects, maybe frightened that they would be called racist, that they didn't ever want to raise these matters. They didn't want to question people's ethnicity and now immigration status. So that has been a major failing of the organisation. A look at Baroness Casey's report, if you remember that, from June next year on group-based child sexual exploitation and abuse. And that said, or it concluded, there has been catastrophic and systematic failures and institutional inaction that has allowed grooming gangs to happen. So this was said last year. A recommendation stated that ethnicity and nationality data must be collected, and we're still waiting for it to happen. So I think we've got to ask why, and I think it was political correctness and maybe fear of people saying you were racist.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example of people power at its best, forcing this debate. I mean, you know, I make the point about Labour. They've had a couple of years where they could have changed this. You made the point, and I think correctly, that ultimately this is political correctness at the heart of various organisations, from the CPS to possibly other public sector organisations. But I think people have had enough. So let's just look at this idea that it's political correctness. When do you think the rot set in?
Maybe 20, 30 years ago. I mean, it's been going on for a long time. People had a vision, a new vision of multiculturalism, what they thought would be the ideal, that everybody could take part in their sort of religious beliefs and we'd all get on as one happy sort of family. And I think people say, no, you can have multiracial societies. We welcome people into this country who are going to add to the country, who are going to be proud to be British, proud of being in this country. But this multiculturalism hasn't worked because people have put their beliefs, their cultures above the British culture and what is acceptable here in Christianity. One of those things is sort of the position of women in society, and in some cultures they are below the equality that you'd have here. So I think this was the start of the problem, people's idealistic views of what multiculturalism would be, and it hasn't proved to be this utopia.
And the debate that you took part in today, was it well attended?
Yes, it was. It was absolutely full. People wanting to raise sort of issues in different ways. The public gallery was also full of women who had been gang raped. They were there too. They were looking for answers. Rupert Lowe has to take credit for this. It was his petition. So, you know, obviously he spoke there as well. And I think you know that he led the independent rape gang inquiry, of which I was on that as well. So I sat on the panel with him there because I thought it was the right thing to do.
Let's just play a clip from someone who was also part of the debate today. This is the independent MP, Ayub Khan.
Victims of child sexual abuse deserve better than to be turned into ammunition in a culture war. They deserve justice, and above all, they deserve honesty. They deserve a system that is brave enough to collect the facts and decent enough not to twist those facts into bigotry. So let us have transparency, let us collect the data, and let us publish what can properly and safely be published. But we must do it for the right reason, to support survivors and to bring offenders to justice.
Now, that was one of the contributions. I'm just struck by the idea that he talks about this potentially could be some form of culture war. What's your reaction to that?
No, right. If people look at things logically, if you take data, when you take just the facts and data, that strips out any of these sort of ulterior motives. This takes out the emotion. This leaves it just with pure data. And that's it. He's right in that regard. It's everybody's data. Anybody who's committed these offences. I'm not saying only a certain group should. But when you have got this consistent data, you can then ascertain questions like, are certain types of exploitation increasing? How are offenders operating? are certain ethnic backgrounds more likely than others to commit these sort of crimes. But when you have the data, you can separate out fact from fiction. You can get to the roots of the problem, and I said, and that's where you can put in strategies to protect current victims, future victims, and bring perpetrators to justice.
And just walk viewers and listeners to talk through the parliamentary process, or what happens next following this debate today in Westminster Hall, following the petition that called for this debate. What happens next?
Well, look, we know that Keir Starmer and his cabinet colleagues have never wanted to do a rape scandal inquiry, and they've been dragged kicking and screaming to do one, and it's also been delayed. They've put as the chair a Labour peer. They've put on the panel somebody who's the chief executive of a council and somebody else who was on a health authority, all of the things that the victims didn't want, because they said some of these institutions were key players in letting them down. So I don't hold up that much hope for the speed with which this Labour government are sort of making progress on both data collections and the rape gang inquiry. But what I will say is they've probably been taken aback by the public demand for this to happen. Therefore, you never know, we could have a breakthrough with this. So all I would say, politics can be a bit of a slow burn, a slow process. But once that sort of momentum gathers, once you see where the public are going, things do speed up. And again, Rupert led the way there with an independent inquiry, and I think that has shamed the government into doing a little bit more.
Yeah, well, let's hope things do change and people do listen. Esther, thank you for that. You were busy today in this debate at Westminster Hall, but I'm sure you've had a few moments to catch up on what we're calling the Mandy files this evening here on Talk. The disgraced MP, or rather peer, Lord Mandelson. What do you make of what you've seen or heard so far?
Well, put it this way, there are a lot of people, cabinet ministers with red faces, a bit shamed, aren't they? One of them, oh, don't you worry, Lammy, this won't come back on you. It's a brilliant appointment. Well, that can be written up in history. Pat McFadden saying, I say to every minister all the time, how are we going to tax people more, or who can we tax more to give more people benefits? So this really is going to be a shock up when they are all, or as many of them are, can be disclosed. But this was always bad judgment. The man, should never have been appointment, but he does seem to be the gift that keeps giving, doesn't he, Mandy? Or you could call them the yum files.
All right, before I let you go, you do a cracking column every Tuesday in print for the Daily Express newspaper. It's online now. Give us just a little bit of a sense of some of the things you've been writing about this week.
Okay, so this week I'm really looking into the black economy, the shadow economy. And when Rachel Reeves and Starmer said they wanted the economy to grow, and I will say it hasn't. The only economy that has grown has been the black economy. There's been like 30,000 shops that have closed down in the last 2 years, and the only shops that are opening at the moment seem to be those barber shops, vape shops, nail bars, 250,000 since 2010, and we're asking what is going on. And we know a lot of that is criminality. We know a lot of that. I think it's 1 in 3 of those American candy stores, criminality's going on there. Mini marts, our vape shops are. So like I said, and on the high street, the only high on the high street now is of the population, as we can smell that cough as we walk around. Look, Rachel Reeves has taxed businesses into oblivion. She's closing down and has closed down so many legitimate businesses that the only businesses that are rising at the moment is the black economy. And again, when you've let 78,000 illegal immigrants into the country, you have to say to yourself, where are they working? And some of the trading standards have said, actually, some of them are working in shops within a week. And those are the dodgy shops on the house.
You're so right to highlight it. Listen, Esther, thank you for your time on this Monday evening. Great to have you on Talk. That's Conservative MP Esther McVey, a Daily Express columnist as well. Read her column online and in print tomorrow. And you heard her here on Talk, the home of common sense. 0344 499 1000 is our number. We've got a stack of messages and calls to get to regarding a load of stuff that we've been chewing over. Let me just recap. Maybe you finally got the kids to bed, or you're driving back from work or whatever, or maybe you started your night shift and you're thinking, what are they talking about here on Talk? Let me just fill in the gaps for you. We just talked to Esther McVey about a Westminster Hall debate that she attended earlier today. And this is a debate about the mandatory collection and publication of certain child sexual offender data. What that means is, right, loads of people, hundreds of thousands of people signed a petition saying this needs to change. You need to be recording the immigration status of people who carry out child sex offences. Also their nationality, their religion, their immigration status, their ethnicity, the whole lot, right? Surely there's no one who's listening or watching Talk this evening who disagrees with that. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Esther made the point very well, which was, well, actually, it's political correctness, that there literally is a disease amongst many, many organisations in the public sector. Better not ask people about their religion, might get a little bit offended. Well, you know, if they've done something appalling and shocking to a child, I think we need to know all of the data about that person, don't you? So your thoughts on that. We're also getting a reaction to the Mandy files, as we're calling them this evening. 0344 499 1000. A bit of chat about the TV licence. Have you got one? Have you stopped paying it? Have you had a knock at the door? Let's have your experience on air tonight. And also the tragic murder of Henry Nowak, who was murdered by Vikram Digwa in Southampton. The murderer was jailed for life earlier today, minimum term 21 years for murdering Henry. And there is a conversation to be had here about the murder weapon, which was a Sikh blade. And I don't know if you know this, because our guests in the last hour had no idea about this, and they're informed, intelligent blokes, but there are legal exemptions that allow Sikhs to carry a knife for religious purposes, right? There are exemptions in place if you're a Sikh, and I'm making this point again, it's not about being nasty to Sikhs, but we need to have this conversation. If you're a Sikh, you're allowed to carry this religious blade, for want of better description. Do we need to remove that exemption? 0344 499 1000 for your thoughts, and tons of other stuff. It's a Monday evening, I'm Duncan Barks, and this is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barks, this is Talk, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Instead of me wanging on, let's get a thought or six from Mark in Lincolnshire. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Duncan. Right.
Welcome to Talk. What would you like to say, sir?
Yeah, well, a few things. We can go wherever you like with these things. I was looking at. I mean, I didn't really take that much note of it, but the Ashcroft poll that came out.
Right. This is so people know, this is Lord Ashcroft, who's a former Conservative or still a Conservative Party donor, and he does quite a lot of political polling. So yeah, which one have you seen, and what do you make of it?
Well, he's a Tory peer, isn't he?
He is.
This one that he's put out that has Conservatives and Reform neck and neck at 21.
Right.
Which obviously you can take it or leave it, really, to be fair. So obviously there's going to be some bias there, I would imagine, but quite how much, who knows?
Well, that's interesting. Sorry to interrupt you. When you say bias, what do you mean? You mean the fact that he's donated to the Conservatives in the past, somehow that it might not be an honest poll? Is that your definition of bias?
Well, I'm not really sure. I mean, when you look at polling, you know, you could apply the same logic really to YouGov in some regards, up until, you know, maybe fairly recently, because wasn't that Nazim Zahawi's, wasn't it, YouGov originally?
Well, he set it up a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago, but obviously he stepped back from there, so it's respected a bit more. But when you've got an active donator of one party creating polls, you do have to kind of look at it and think...
Yeah, if I was going to be pedantic, and I will be, he's not creating polls, is he? He's funding them. But I can understand the point you're making. So let's cut to the chase. So I think you said there's Reform and who? The Conservatives on level pegging?
Conservatives on, level pegging on 21.
Yes.
But what it actually got me thinking was about the Conservatives in general. I mean, I'm a Restore Britain member. I've never hidden that. I talk about it a lot on here. But it got me thinking about something. I thought, well, hang on a minute. Has Kemi actually played a blinder here? Because when you look at voters going forward and they're saying, well, who are we going to vote for? Well, I'm not going to vote for the Tories. Look at what they did to us. What they're actually talking about is the Johnson years at the end of the day. That's really what they're in reference to.
Well, and maybe a dash of Liz Truss in there, possibly.
Possibly, but I actually would think a lot of Reform voters actually don't particularly mind Liz Truss. And they think she got a bit of a bad deal, I think.
Well, the funny thing about Liz Truss is, and Mark, I'm glad you phoned up, so thank you, because I enjoy a bit of a political chinwag, is that she got absolutely hammered when she was Prime Minister because the gilt yields went through the roof, right? You know, the amount of money that we have to pay to borrow, to borrow money for this country. They went sky high, and yet in the last 8 weeks, they've gone even higher, breached the level that Liz Truss was allegedly responsible for under Starmer and Reeves, and no one's batted an eyelid.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because you've got an entirely captured left-wing establishment, haven't you? You know, all the way through to the financial sector. So that's kind of where a lot of that felt at the time, and it still feels that way today, to be honest with you. And as you've just stated there, you know, the fact it's even higher now, and that, you know, nobody's saying anything about it, would suggest that is truly the case.
But you think Kemi Badenoch's played a bit of a blinder here, then?
Yeah, I do, because when you think, I was just thinking about this, and I was thinking, if you're talking about the Johnson years, which most people would do, where you've got the mass immigration at a ridiculous level, you've got the COVID stuff, all this stuff. But when you actually look at the architects of all that stuff, they're all in Reform. You got Nazim Zahawi, he was the vaccine mandates guy. He cost thousands of people their jobs. You've got...
He's now joined Reform, hasn't he?
Yeah. You got Nadine Dorries, she's now in Reform. She's the Online Safety Act that was taking away our free speech. You've got Robert Jenrick, who was the immigration minister when the clandestine 30,000 Afghans turn up, and some of those have gone on to rape and kill people in this country.
He also set up the migrant hotels, didn't he?
Yep, and he wrote the piece, Resettlement of Afghans is a National Project. All of these people, right, are now in Reform.
Let's have this conversation. I wasn't going to do this tonight, but you've been good enough to call up, all right? I have had, in the last, 6 weeks, 1 experience myself and 2 experiences relayed to me by mates of mine, okay, because they know that I talk and write about politics for a living, okay, and I mentioned this on my social media feed. You can find me on X, I'm Duncan Barks, but several weeks ago I was in my local pub and there was a guy there chatting to his mate, and I know them on nodding terms, Mark, all right? I don't know them intimately, but and one of them's a builder, the other one I think is a delivery driver, all right, and they started talking politics and they started talking about Restore Britain, right? And I was thinking, blimey, you know, because I thought, and no disrespect to yourself, but I thought Restore Britain was purely a social media thing. I thought, you know, the world I work in, there's a bit of a bubble going on. Everyone's banging on about Rupert Lowe. To hear a couple of blokes down the boozer talking about that, I thought that's really interesting. And then last week, my mate Steve, who was having his kitchen done, can't say any more because I don't want to identify him, but he was just like, the guy who's fitting my cupboard started talking about Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain. What's that about? We had that conversation. And then someone else I know was telling me about their next door neighbour who had some tradesmen. I don't know if it's a tradesman thing. I don't want to be, you know, too speculative. Yeah. And they started saying that they were going to vote for Restore. Now, let's talk about this, because I have a theory, and you've kind of alluded to it, and this is, I'm not making a political point, but I wonder whether or not the fact that Nigel Farage has taken quite a few old Tories into Reform has actually ended up working against him. What do you reckon?
Well, I mean, we can get into a whole debate about this.
Well, I don't want to debate. I want the answer to your question, mate. What do you think?
I think that's a huge part of it. I think, obviously, as I said at the beginning there, I am a Restore Britain member. I get the same thing, and I keep trying to tell people, you know, in the online world, which I'm in, quite, you know, not all the time. I kind of dip in and out through the day. But I think Reform people, a lot of the callers I will hear on this station, they don't seem to realise exactly what is happening. And I've been saying this for quite, you know, I mean, Restore Britain set up, I think, February 13th this year. This has been going about 4 months. You know, and I keep saying every time when I've been ringing up previously, and I keep saying, look, you're talking, I think it's like 140,000 members now. We've got getting on for 350 branches throughout the country. It is not an online thing. But then you also have to factor in as well, Duncan, you know, when you're talking about broadcast media, it's about, I think it's something like 10% or less than 10% of UK adults are actually engaging with broadcast media on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Whereas 80% of UK adults are engaging with social media on a daily basis. And I've been saying for a long, long time, the next general election will be won and lost on social media.
I think there's some mileage behind that. Listen, I'm going to move it on in a sec, but before I let you go, Mark, you started off by saying you think that Kemi Badenoch has played a blinder. What is that blinder that you think she's played? Let's just join the dots here.
That she's offloaded the cancer of the Johnson cabinet.
Right.
Really, that's what she's steadily been doing. And Nigel Farage and Reforms have willingly taken them on, thinking they're getting a win.
That's really interesting. Mark, thank you for your call. That's Mark in Lincolnshire, 0344 499 1000 for yours. You want to pick up on what Mark was saying. This is John, who's in North Yorkshire. Hello, John.
Hello there, Duncan. How are you?
Very well, sir. What would you like to say?
Yeah, on about the television licence. Now, I'm 75-year-old. I haven't had a television for, I think it's nearly 26 years now.
Okay.
But I still...
So, sorry, hang on. You've not had a television for how long?
26 years.
Do you not miss EastEnders and One Man and His Dog and stuff?
No, not at all. No, I do not miss television at all. And for more than one reason.
Yeah.
A, I wouldn't want to give a penny of my money to the BBC.
Okay, tell me why.
Why? Because I think they're very biased.
Right. I'm going to be slightly flippant towards you, John. No disrespect, but if you've not watched telly for over 20 years, how do you know their bias?
Why? Well, you hear about it. I've still got the computer.
Ah, so you're reading their websites?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can still get the news.
Yeah.
You know, you can get news without television.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying about the television licence, the hounding, the bullying.
Well, let's talk about that. Have you received letters, knocks at the door?
I get letters regularly. And what I do is I just collect them up. And you know what the crafty devils do? At Christmas time, they send you a letter in a red envelope, so you think it's a card.
No.
Yes.
That's a shocker. So what? You get a red letter from the BBC licensing people, and you're thinking, oh, someone's been decent enough to send me a Christmas card. You're expecting to open it up and see a picture of a robin on the front and maybe a Christmas pudding, and instead it's a letter saying you need to give us money.
Yeah. And the thing is, what I do is I collect all these cards, not cards, all these letters up. Right, I don't even open them because I know where they're from. And then what I do is when I get a good collection and they weigh a little bit, I get a big envelope, a plain white envelope, put them in it, and post them back without a stamp on.
Right. So they have to pay for the postage. How many of these letters do you reckon you've had over the years then?
God, no. I wouldn't like to hazard a guess. I must have had hundreds. But I remember once, a while ago, I had a bang on the door about tea time-ish, and there stood. I actually thought he was a bouncer. He was dressed like a bouncer, and he looked like one. And he looked at me, and I thought, I'm in trouble here. And he says, "Excuse me, sir," he says, "we've no recollection of a television licence being issued at this address." And I said, "Do you know, mate, you're absolutely dead right," and I shut the door on him.
It's interesting you said they look like a bouncer. Did you feel a bit intimidated?
No, I didn't feel intimidated, but when I realised, when he come out with that, the licence bit, I thought, well, something, mate. I said, these are really bullying tactics now. But I wouldn't have none on it. I just shut the door on his face.
It's really interesting, your take on this. And I'm struck by the fact that I think you said you've not had a TV for, was it 26 years?
Yeah.
Can I ask you why?
Why? I don't need one. Well, I don't need a television. I can amuse myself in many ways. I have a lot of hobbies. I do a lot of things. But if I want to look at the news, I look at the news on the website.
Yeah.
I don't need to have a television. I'm not interested in all these reality TV shows and that people talk about. I don't know what the hell they're on about half the time.
No, you're not missing out on anything. And if you don't mind, and this is quite a personal question, John, how old are you?
I'm 76 nearly.
So when someone knocks at your front door, it looks like a bit of a big bloke. You described the last person as a bouncer. Does that make you feel a bit intimidated?
Not really, because I'm a shooting man.
All right, listen, thank you for your call. That's John in North Yorkshire. Just make sure you don't get your shooters out next time someone rocks up at your door.
Never ever use them, though.
No, I hope not. Have a good night, my friend. That's John in North Yorkshire, 0344 499 1000. Happy to continue to take your calls and messages on this, because I think it's really interesting. I'm not here to bash the BBC, all right? I worked for it for 6 years. I will say I think the BBC does some things very well. From the point of view that the commercial broadcasting world that, I've worked in for a good few decades. It was a long time ago. I used to run radio stations, so I know what it's like to try and make money out of broadcasting. There's some stuff that if you run a commercial radio station or even a TV station, right, I'm going to be slightly flippant here, and just to prove a point, something that was really, really niche, okay, brass rubbing, all right? If you were running a commercial TV station and someone said to you, I've got this programme that I want to do about brass rubbing, and the people who run the TV station would go, well, how many people do you think like brass rubbing in 2026? And they might go, well, it's quite niche, but some people might like it. You would go, mate, it's not for us because we can't make any money out of it. For the simple reason, there wouldn't be a massive amount of audience. So therefore, if we try to sell adverts or the TV or the radio in between the bits of your brass rubbing programme, no one's going to be interested because no one's watching in great numbers. So that is an argument for public service broadcasting. Let the BBC make brass rubbing programmes because they're funded in a different way from the commercial sector. So I think there is an argument to say that some form of public service broadcasting has a place. All right. But the issue here is quite simply generations beneath me, like my kid who's in her early 20s, the guys who are in the studio in the last hour, Sean and Matthew. There's no way in the world of paying for Netflix, paying for Spotify Premium, other services are available, and free broadcasting like us here at Talk. There is no way the future generations will wear forking out for a licence fee and run the risk of ending up in court because some no-mark knocks on their front door going, you've been watching TV. And someone goes, I haven't got a TV, I don't watch live TV. So I'm more than happy to continue to take your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Now, I'm warning you, if you've got a high blood pressure, you might want to take your pills now. There's a story doing the rounds that preloaded ration cards will prevent those with convictions linked to drink, gambling or drugs from funding their habits. The Conservatives have got an idea to introduce these kind of ration cards to prevent thousands of criminals from spending their benefit money on alcohol and gambling. I want to ask the question, why just criminals? We'll get to that next as we talk to Paul Scully on Tory policy, next at Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's a Monday evening. I'm Duncan Barks. If you're wondering who I am, I'm here on Talk between now and the end of the week, 7 till 10 p.m, in for Peter Cardwell. He's on his holidays, and I'm here taking care of the evening exchange. Good to have you along. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Now, this is a story that I find genuinely intriguing already this evening. We have talked about the ballooning welfare budget in this country, which, from my perspective, it is fair to say that the Labour government seems unable to get a grip on. In fact, we know last year that Rachel Reeves and a few other people, Keir Starmer, remember him, tried to get through a little bit of a change to how much we were increasing our welfare spend on. And what happened is a lot of Labour backbenchers got pretty hacked off with the Prime Minister and rebelled. And because he is the Prime Minister that he is, he kind of like went, OK, I won't do anything at all. So anything that's benefits related, I think, is something we need to talk about here on Talk, because ultimately it's you and I who pay for it, right? As we like to say on this station, alarm clock Britain. Those of us who get out of bed in the morning, put in a shift, graft, pay vast amounts of tax and wondering why the hell we're bothering. So we need to have this conversation when we hear about a political party who's going, well, hang on, we've got an idea here to save money on welfare. Here's a proposal that I want to chew over with you. The number 0344 499 1000 for your reaction to this. And we can broaden this out, because if you think that I'm being too harsh on people regarding welfare, you must call me out. You know, I'm happy to take all kinds of opinion here. It's not just a one-sided conversation. Also, if maybe you've got a bit of insight regarding what we're about to talk about, I would welcome that as well, because I'm quite aware, you know, it's very easy for me to sit here in a studio with a microphone and talk about what I feel about stuff. I only have a certain amount of insight. So if you've got a different bit of insight, you're most welcome. 0344 499 1000. Now, this is the proposal. And it's a proposal from the Conservative Party. And the idea is that preloaded ration cards will prevent those with convictions, so people who have been convicted of drink offences, gambling or drug offences, from funding their habits. Now, the Conservatives have outlined this idea. They plan to introduce ration cards, if they get back into government, to prevent thousands of criminals from spending their benefits on alcohol and gambling. They say they want to reduce Britain's ballooning welfare bill by issuing criminal claimants with cards that severely limit what their money can be spent on. Now, this scheme is modelled on something called Aspin cards, which are currently given to asylum seekers, which cannot be used in betting shops or cash machines. This proposal, the new benefit ration cards, would apply to welfare claimants who have received a community or suspended sentence where alcohol, gambling or drugs were a factor. The Shadow Home Secretary, a man you often hear on Talk, Chris Philp, said that up to 130,000 criminals a year could be issued with these cards, and it could save taxpayers a shed load of cash. Sounds like a good idea? Well, let's get a view on this from former Conservative MP Paul Scully, who joins us. Hello, Paul.
Evening to you, Duncan.
Welcome to Talk on this Monday evening. I've just spent a good couple of minutes outlining to our viewers and listeners what this Tory party proposal is about. Just to give us a little bit more thinking behind it, if you'd be kind enough.
Well, look, I mean, I'm not involved in the policy development anymore as I stepped down from Parliament last time. But so I've been watching and reading about what Chris Philp has suggested today. And it seems a really sensible approach for debate. I think it probably does need refining as we go through, but you don't need to be lily-livered about this. What he's suggesting is that rather than just having cash handouts to people to spend on what they want, you curate it slightly so that you've got criminals that are on benefits, and okay, fine, they should be getting the benefits because if they're not working, but you want to encourage them to work. But taxpayers shouldn't be funding their smoking. They should be, folks definitely shouldn't be funding their gambling, because obviously that's what sometimes and too often sets the cycle up for more criminality and those kind of things. And I know Chris was doing a radio interview a little bit earlier on when he was sort of saying, is it humiliating to these people? Well, see, at what point do you start and stop with all of this sort of stuff? And talk about cigarettes, by the way. The government are hopeless at this. The cancer research reckon that only one in two cigarettes actually have the tax paid on them anyway. Yeah. So 28 billion smoked. Only customs and excise only pick up tax on 14 billion of them. So that actually means that they're not getting them through credit cards, through normal shops anyway. They're getting them from duty free and illegal aspects anyway. So there's definitely something in here. I think we shouldn't do it just as a gimmick. We absolutely have to do it for, yes, saving money, but to actually make these people make criminals change their behaviour, shape their behaviour, and actually be punished.
You use the word gimmick, and that's a really interesting word, and I'll tell you why. Because I think some of our viewers and listeners, and certainly myself, will find themselves thinking, hang on a second, this Conservative policy announcement, and I know you're not part of the Conservative shadow cabinet, so you might think this is an unfair question, but this talks about stopping criminals spending their benefits on alcohol or cigarettes or gambling. Some of our listeners and viewers, myself included, will find themselves thinking, well, actually, no one who's on benefits should be able to spend cash on having several beers. And that might sound really brutal, but we don't have an infinite pot of money. The money is in short supply. Surely these restrictions should be right across the board.
I think it's something that you could possibly start with this and then grow it, see how it goes. You first of all need the debate over the next couple of years until the Conservatives are in a position to be in power to enact this, and then you need to see how it goes. But yeah, absolutely, I'll be with you on that. There is a sense of making sure you get it absolutely right for everybody. It's already the case for asylum seekers, as you say, the so-called Aspen card. But bearing in mind, as I say, this will save money, but it won't save lots of money. You've still got a lot of things to do in the welfare budget to cut it substantially, to actually make it more affordable for the taxpayer, frankly. There's a huge amount of our taxes is going on welfare.
Yeah, I think we can agree that, and it seems that the current administration seems unable or unwilling to do anything serious to reduce how much money we're spending on welfare. Just a final point to put to you, and then we'll maybe broaden out the conversation a little bit regarding welfare in general. There will be some people listening and watching who might think, hang on a second, how has this been allowed to happen in the past, particularly when we had a Conservative government for 14 years who clearly allowed the benefit system to run in a way that people were quite freely able to spend their money on fags and booze?
Well, bearing in mind the first 5 years was coalition with the Lib Dems, and that would have been next to just never going to change.
But that was a Conservative Prime Minister still.
No, absolutely. But just part of the coalition, you're never going to get that past the Lib Dems and keep that coalition going over that period. So it was a little bit of stasis. Although, having said that, that's when universal credit came in, which absolutely looked at gambling. It looked at worklessness when you had generations of people in households that never had a job. You looked at addiction and family breakdown and those kind of things. There's a lot of really serious thinking, especially by the Centre of Social Justice, the think tank that Ian Duncan Smith founded, that brought universal credit in. But you're right. Look, I mean, I think in latter years, even though under Boris we had a big majority, there were other fights to be had. And so we lost. That's one of the reasons we lost our way as a party, because of the buffeting around by some absolutely massive things. Partygate, but also COVID, Ukraine, energy crisis and those kind of things. So we didn't focus on what was really important, and we have let the welfare bill run away with it. But you see Pat McFadden, I mean, in the Mandelson things that were released today, he said himself, when they were trying to reform the welfare state last year and cut welfare, he was saying, well, everyone's just saying, well, who else can we tax?
Who can we tax next? Well, listen, we'll get on to the Mandelson files and your thoughts on that in a second, but I just want to put one more point to you about welfare, because you're good enough to join us to talk about this, and I want to broaden it out just a little bit. I was quite surprised over the weekend to read an interview with the former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, still a Conservative MP, who broke ranks with Conservative Party policy, saying that we need to certainly review and if not scrap the triple lock on pensions, which I thought was quite a brave thing to do. You and I both know that a big chunk of the welfare bill is made up by the pension situation and the triple lock. Do you think he was right to say it needs to be reviewed, or do you think the triple lock must stay?
I would absolutely scrap it like a shot. Look, I mean, I know there will be a lot of pensioners. I'm aspiring to be a pensioner, not that distant, not that too far. But, you know, it is just unsustainable. We are chasing a core vote. We're only doing it essentially because so much of our votes and increasingly Labour votes are coming from older people who tend to go out and vote, which is understandable politically, short term, terrible long term, because we are asking people that have made more out of their properties than anyone else in any other generation. That not everybody, clearly there are people that genuinely rely on their state pension and have nothing else, but that they are getting the benefit from that, whereas young people can't even get in the housing ladder, have no thought about even getting a pension. We've got to balance that out somehow. It's unsustainable. It really does need to go. We need to have a proper discussion about that.
So as a Conservative MP, you would advocate scrapping the triple lock on pensions?
It's done its job. It's actually started to bring the state pensions up where they drifted away. Again, funnily enough, it was a Lib Dem idea in the coalition, ironically. But yeah, it's done its job in starting to bring it back up again. I'd move it down to at least a double lock, if not further.
All right, and the final question, you alluded earlier to the Mandy files, as we've been calling them, Paul, on this show. I mean, we had Esther McVeigh, Conservative MP for Tatton, on earlier, and she was just saying, look, it just shows you how government's been operating over the last few years, and almost like this slightly creepy, if not bizarre, grip that the disgraced peer Peter Mandelson had on the Labour Party at various times over the last few years. What has been your main takeaway regarding what we've seen and heard over the last few hours?
Well, it's fascinating that someone like Wes Streeting, who a lot of the members of the Labour Party are quite down on because of his close links with Mandelson has obviously taken in his camaraderie and then shoved it back by saying he's had a midlife crisis somewhere. So Mandelson just trades in information, and he's been playing both sides in the party, all manner of sides in the party. I think it was interesting. I think it was The Spectator had a great line when they said the only difference between the thick of it and government is that in the thick of it they don't say this is just like the thick of it.
Very true. Paul, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for your time on this Monday evening. That's former Conservative MP Paul Scully here on Talk. I'm very keen to pick up on something that I wasn't going to ask him until we started talking about welfare in more detail, about the triple lock and pensions. Now, that's not really part of our list of stuff that I was going to chew over between now and 10, but there's a former Conservative MP who's just been on this radio station who is advocating for the triple lock on pensions to be scrapped. You also had over the weekend former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt saying it's time for the triple lock to go. And you may have a view on that, because some people may go, well, gee, I've been paying in all my life, right, my national insurance, so I should get a decent pension. But you and I both know, or most of us know, you're not paying into some magical pot with your name on it. You know, you and I are paying in now to sustain today's pensioners. There's no pot with Duncan Barks written on it. Access it when you're 67. So if you want to have the triple lock conversation between now and 10, more than happy to do that. 0344 499 1000 is the number. It is the Evening Exchange on a Monday night. This is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. It's Duncan here through until 10. The divine and sublime Petri Hoskin here from 10 o'clock tonight here on Talk. In the meantime, let's take a call. This is Pat in London. Hello, Pat.
Oh, good evening. Yeah, I mean, can't nobody on speech radio, no disrespect to you or anybody else, you know, always got to bring up pensioners and triple locks, and you got the article you just interviewed.
The article?
Yeah.
Well, I interviewed a former Conservative MP called Paul Scully, who says the triple lock should now be scrapped.
Yeah. Well, that's who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Is that not a good idea?
Well, people like that make me want to reach for a plastic bowl and be, you know, ill in it. Basically.
Why? Why?
Well, why?
Yeah.
Because our pensions, state pensions, are among the most meagrest in Europe.
Certainly, that is correct.
And what about all them?
But we're not saying don't pay the pension. We're just saying we have to review how much it goes up by.
I understand that. I do understand that, and I acknowledge that.
Right.
But you've got all these people in the Lords, £300 a day for turning up, and they're all millionaires.
Well, I don't know if they're all millionaires, but go on.
Come off it. They're wealthy people. They're wealthy people in their own right. Now, and you've got all the MPs who will get gold-plated index-linked pensions, right? And they've got private pensions as well, probably.
Some might have.
And you've got all these public service police chiefs, these council bigwigs.
People in the civil service, they get decent pensions.
Yes.
People in the NHS get decent pensions.
If I'm going to give up, if they take away my triple lot, they've got to take away their lot and see how, and let's see how they get on with it.
I'm intrigued, Pat, because you said it's always people in speech radio talk about this or speech broad. Yeah, but because it's relevant. There's an argument to say we can't afford it anymore.
No.
The economy's trashed.
No, but the point is, if people got, and you say, oh, people own their own houses and all that, well, they're only worth money when you sell them.
Yes.
If you live in your own house, it's not worth a hill of beans unless you sell it, and then where you going to go? Because property, if you sell your house for whatever it is, then you've got to go and buy look for a place, go looking all over the southeast for a place that's sort of within your budget. So it only is worth money to them, say, wealthy pensioners, not when they sell the property. Then they've got to go looking for another one. So
can you see? I'm only putting this to you because I'm doing my job. Can you see the argument that our welfare bill is ballooning, right?
Yeah.
And at least a third of that is paying out people's pensions. Okay.
Yeah, well,
and hang on. And if we're going to somehow try and just just prune back how much we spend on welfare, that there is an argument to say that the triple lock has to go.
Well, right. If the triple lock has to go, so do their gold-plated index-linked pensions when they retire. Gonzo. Get a basic state income. No gold-plated, no nice toppings up and all that. No golden handshake when they retire of Harbour Mill like these foul bosses of water companies.
Water companies aren't public, are they? They're private companies.
What I'm saying is that it's all relevant because they all get bigger than what other people.
All right, let me try something out on you, only in the spirit of debate, Pat, because I'm enjoying this conversation. Okay, so when we talk about, I think the problem with this whole debate about the triple lock is we say the triple lock should be scrapped. And a lot of people, possibly yourself, but maybe not, just think, oh, that means they're never going to increase my pension. Because when people hear the phrase, scrap the triple lock, people start to understandably panic. Could you accept that maybe, instead of having a triple lock, maybe the rise in pensions is simply pegged to the rise in wage growth every year? So it's still going up, right? But it's maybe it doesn't have the triple lock; it just has a single lock. Could that work for you?
Well, what for about £6 or £7 each extra a year? I mean, it'd probably even be less than a tenner a year when inflation's going up. You've got the council tax is going up. You've got prices in the supermarkets going up.
Yeah. Okay, I take your point. So I'm going to end this chat by asking you, because you're a man of good thinking and solid opinion, how would you reduce our ballooning welfare bill? What's the answer, Pat?
Well,
bless you.
Maybe if Rachel Reeves was to unlock the what they call it, governors in national insurance employers have to pay.
Yeah.
And reduce, what they call it, if you've got a business,
business rates. Yeah.
Business rates, and it would encourage people to take people on.
Yeah, wouldn't get any argument from me. We don't particularly have a government that's pro-business. Listen, I enjoyed the conversation, Pat. Thank you. You're worth your weight in gold, because you've opened up the whole triple lock debate. 0344 499 1000 is the number of talk. You want to get involved in that? We'll take more of your messages and calls after 9.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's Duncan Barks here, through until 10 on Talk, the home of common sense. Really good to have you along tonight. 0344 499 1000. I keep giving out the number because people want to get in contact and just give their thoughts and their opinions about a ton of stuff we're chewing over, including something that's I've kind of lit the blue touch paper inside the last 15 minutes. I mean, I just come in here and do a gig, right? I don't mean to cause aggravation, but clearly some people take an issue with the possible suggestion that we scrap the triple lock on pensions. Now, this came out of a conversation and a chat I had earlier with the former Conservative MP Paul Scully about the situation regarding welfare spending in this country. And there's a Conservative Party policy about having these kind of ration cards that are given to criminals on welfare who have got convictions or suspended sentences for drug-related incidents or gambling or drug offences or whatever. And these kind of cards, they're like ration cards, could only be spent on like essentials, not on drink, not on gambling, and not on fags. And as part of that conversation, I said to Paul, let's just get your view about welfare spending per se, and what do you think of the triple lock on pensions? And he was quite bold. You know, he said the triple lock needs to go. And over the weekend, we had the former Conservative Chancellor Jeremy Hunt saying it needs to go. Now, both those men, I mean, Jeremy Hunt's still an MP, Paul Scully is not currently, but both those men, at odds with Conservative Party policy under Kemi Badenoch, who made it really clear that the triple lock must stay. We're getting a load of messages in regarding that. I'll get to those a little bit later on, but if you want to add your thoughts to that, 0344 499 1000. And you can text the word talk and your comments to 87222. We're also talking about the Mandelson files as well, and we're also talking about the murder of the young lad in Southampton, Henry Nowak, who was murdered by Vikram Digwa, who's been jailed for life, got to serve a minimum term of 21 years. It gets us into this whole debate about what we call religious blades, or the Sikh blade, known as the kirpan. And there is a conversation happening and a debate taking place about whether or not the legal exemption that allows Sikhs to carry a knife should be removed. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. In a second, we're going to get to a story that I think is really concerning. We talk about small boats a lot here at Talk, but there's also documented evidence of people coming to this country illegally, not by small boats crossing the channel, but instead coming on board yachts, being smuggled into little ports around the southeast of England and beyond. We'll get to that in a few moments' time. But I've got some breaking news here at Talk. This is from the former Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell. You know him, quite chummy with Jeremy Corbyn over the years. And he's told our colleagues at Times Radio that Pat McFadden has been disloyal and should consider resigning from the cabinet. Now, this is off the back of the Mandelson files, or the Mandy files, we've been talking about tonight here on Talk. Speaking to my Times Radio colleague, Kate Borsay, the former Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell said, it looks as though Pat McFadden was Peter Mandelson's person in cabinet. He was also the representative of Peter Mandelson within government itself, feeding information to him, exchanging derogatory remarks about Keir himself and Keir's style of government. He questioned whether Keir can have any confidence in him for the future. And he went on to say, I would expect Pat himself to think himself about whether he should continue in his role, because he's clearly not been loyal, in fact quite disloyal, to the very person who's appointed him, said McDonnell. Asked if Sir Keir Starmer should, quote, wield the axe, he said, if I was Keir, I'd be asking Pat to consider his position. So that's some breaking news off the back of the latest revelations in the Mandy files. Also inside the last few minutes, Nigel Farage has taken to X social media to give his reaction regarding the sentencing of Vikram Digwa, who murdered Henry Nowak. Farage saying, our institutions don't care about Henry Nowak because he is white. I do, and he deserves justice. Release the body cam footage now. So a couple of bits of breaking news here on Talk. If you want to react to any of those, 0344 499 1000. We'll keep you updated as the hour continues. Now, this story that, I'll be honest with you, this story that I'm about to talk about, and I'm going to get reaction in a few moments' time from Henry Bolton, is a story that is remarkably close to home. Let me explain. This is something that's been developing. Now, I'll be honest with you. I live on the south coast, right? I live on the south coast of the United Kingdom. I live in a place called Chichester in West Sussex. If you ever find yourself down there, go to the Eastgate pub. Stuart has taken over the kitchen. He does this immense thing on the menu. It is called the beef brisket bargee. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, it's a great. I know it's great. You've got to have one. I'll try and bring one in one night. Anyway, I love living in Chichester. We're not far from the sea, and we are discovering in a report today that some of our little kind of seaside ports or harbours are being used to smuggle people into the United Kingdom illegally. Yachts carrying migrants have been foiled all around Britain's coastline, including off the coasts of Newquay, Brixham and Chichester. Did I mention the Eastgate pub? But less conventional targets have also included the village of Rye in East Sussex, which is 2 miles inland. And there is a view that not enough is being done about this. A lot of focus on how do we stop the small boats going across the channel, right? Not enough focus on these little ports, these little harbours, where smugglers are turning to yachts to provide a route for people to enter the UK illegally while avoiding detection, typically for those not wishing to claim asylum. You shocked by this? See, I've heard rumours in the past about the beaches along East Sussex and indeed parts of West Sussex where boats have landed illegally. I stress they are only rumours. I've got nothing to back them up or substantiate them. It's only hearsay, gossip down the pub. Over the years, I don't know if it's the case. But this is interesting, and a recent development saw the arrest of 5 men after a yacht carrying 7 people to the UK was illegally intercepted off the south coast of England. Working with the National Crime Agency, Border Security Command maritime officers met the yacht as it arrived into Chichester Marina, West Sussex, on the evening of Monday the 25th of May, so that's last Monday. 2 crew members, one a British national aged 42 and one an Albanian national aged 25, were arrested on suspicion of facilitating illegal immigration to the UK. Officers also identified a further 3 people, one a British national aged 38, 2 Albanians aged 24 and 32, they suspected of being, quote, a shore party there to meet the vessel. They were also arrested on suspicion of people smuggling offences. So that's the background to this story. Let's get a view on this from Henry Bolton, who joins us on Talk. Hello, Henry.
Hello, good evening.
Thank you for your time on this Monday night. Let's just get your view on this as a man who knows his politics and knows his security. Should we be surprised by what we're hearing?
No, not at all. I've been warning about this for around about 12 years, I think. Organised criminals will exploit any opportunity they can to move people who want to come to the United Kingdom illegally, to move them here. First of all, you'll recall, they were coming across in trucks on the ferries, hence all the investment made in securing the port of Calais. It's worked to an extent, but we've still got an estimated 6,000 to 7,000 people a year coming across on that route. We don't concentrate on that because now the more sort of high profile, if you like, issue is the small boats. But we've got 2 other ways to get in. It's exactly this way. Yachts, the small yachts and so on, just the sort of pleasure boats, if you like, have been used for many years to smuggle narcotics, weapons and people into the United Kingdom. But we've also got a myriad of small airfields around the UK, particularly in the southeast, and they in the past have been used for exactly the same thing. The problem is, Duncan, that our entire border architecture, and I use that in the broadest sense, not just laws, not just policies, but the actual structures themselves are not fit for purpose. I worked with 57 countries to help them to sort out their borders as their sort of strategic border advisor, if you like. And I can tell you that across the Northern Hemisphere, the United Kingdom is just about the most dysfunctional in terms of sort of mutual support and coherence in our border architecture, and we're too fragmented. Different agencies doing different things, whereas in other countries it would be one agency responsible for the whole piece.
Well, let me just pick you up on that, if I may. I mean, I see that, and I think a lot of our viewers and listeners would see that as a dereliction of duty, right? So why has this happened? Why has this been allowed to happen over the years?
There have been a number of reasons, really. It's a long story, Duncan, but if you start off as William IV set up something called the Preventative Service. It was to stop smuggling. It was one agency, but the whole when you add dimensions to this, such as it's not just maritime, it's aviation and so on, it's the ferries and so on now too. And we just simply haven't kept pace. That's the problem. We have not kept pace with the changing phenomenon of international migration. We haven't kept pace with transnational organised crime. And in fact, under Tony Blair, and then particularly under the Cameron Osborne government, we just took a massive, great scythe to our law enforcement capabilities, particularly on intelligence. We got rid of the National Criminal Intelligence Service, which provided us a coherent intelligence picture. Basically, they were money-saving moves. And
so these effectively were government cuts for presumably political reasons, but effectively now they're coming back to pardon the phrase, bite us on the backside, because we now have documented evidence that people are arriving in this country illegally, not using the small boats that we often read about across the channel, but are coming into ports like Brixham or Chichester or Newquay. And I should imagine, I mean, knowing these places relatively well, that is actually quite hard to police, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, historically, the harbour masters had a statutory duty to record and check all vessels moving into their harbour, even the small ports. There was a statutory obligation placed on them to do that. They were part of, if you like, the border architecture. But then when we started sort of allowing ports to be used by private companies in a far more sort of liberal manner. You're on the south coast in Chichester, I'm in Folkestone. Well, Folkestone Harbour Company is more interested in developing the harbour for housing to make money than it is to use it as a port. Well, that's their prerogative, because under the law they're allowed to do that. But they have nobody working for them that knows anything about border security or maritime issues in that regard. So we've stripped away those historical mechanisms that were put in place, and that actually safeguarded this country incredibly well for pretty much centuries. And so we've dismantled that in our naivety and sort of. I'm going to say I'm slightly capitalist myself, but we have chased the money so much that we have neglected the security of the nation.
What's interesting? Yeah, what's interesting about what we're hearing here is that the people who are being smuggled in illegally, maybe by a yacht, not crossing the channel by a small boat, they're not claiming asylum. So therefore, we have no real numbers as to how many people have entered this country in that way. Correct. They're well below the radar. But also, we're not just talking about people, because presumably drugs and weapons could enter the country in the same way. And that makes this even more sinister.
Yeah, I mean, for 3 years, Duncan, I led the UK's efforts, intelligence and tactical operational efforts to disrupt transnational organised crime going through the Southern Balkans and heading towards Europe and the United Kingdom. The focus of that was on people smuggling and human trafficking. But everywhere you looked, every investigation we did, there were various nexus points, facilitators, if you like, common denominators in the organised crime sort of matrix. They'll move. They don't stick to one commodity, i.e. people. Some of them do, but there is always that connection somewhere along the route, somewhere in the network, to narcotics, to firearms, to terrorism, to false documentation. It is a massive national security issue. Tony Blair pulled the funding on those sort of programs in 2006, and there's no historical sort of record of it or sort of memory of it now institutionally. So what we need to do is look at the whole piece. We need to look at our border architecture as one issue, not separate it down into immigration, firearms, counter narcotics, and so on. It's got to be, Duncan. Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
If you come from, well, let's say Chichester, you've probably got one police station in Chichester.
Yeah.
But if you, which makes sense, you've got a police force there, some police officers who deal with road traffic issues, assaults, drunken disorderly, criminal damage, whatever it may be. Our borders are managed rather as follows. It would be the equivalent of having a police force in Chichester that deals with assaults, another one that deals with road traffic things, another one that deals with criminal damage, another one that deals with fraud, another one that deals with high-tech crime, all wearing different uniforms, all operating out of different police stations, and all operating or answering to different government departments.
So there's no joined-up thinking, and there's no integration, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Most countries, even Albania, the Republic of Montenegro, Tajikistan, the poorest country probably in the Northern Hemisphere, have integrated national border strategies where there's one national set of objectives, and every single agency that has anything to do with borders is answerable to tasks set to them by that national strategy. So it sets the national objectives, it creates direction, it drives efforts, unified efforts, and mutually supporting efforts to achieve those objectives. The United Kingdom does not have such a strategy. There is a thing called the border strategy, but it's a PR exercise. It doesn't drive any efforts or strategic goals. So, it's something that could be done in 8 months, Duncan. I've said it for many years. We need one. We haven't got it.
Right. And I don't want to scaremonger, but potentially, given what you've said, and you've explained it brilliantly, Henry, so thank you, we could have people in this country that we don't know are here, along with a load of weapons that we don't know are here.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolutely. You never know quite what is here based on seizures, but a seizure does tell you that you've got stuff coming in. The National Crime Squad, the National Crime Agency, has made a number of seizures over the last 5-7 years or so of highly sophisticated automatic weapons and explosives. So we know there are attempts to bring this stuff across. We just don't know how many have succeeded. It's a massive problem, Duncan, and I am very worried that indeed there is a great deal more of illegal and illicit commodities in the UK than we have any clue about.
Yeah, I think just listening to you speak, I mean, this is very much the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Quickly, go on.
Duncan, just one statistic, if I may. A little while ago, about a year, 18 months ago, Thames Water did a survey because they were under criticism because they weren't maintaining the infrastructure of the water supply system and so on in London and elsewhere. And so they did a survey to look at how many people were actually using this based on wastewater. And they believe that there are 600,000 people more in London than the government and the authorities are aware of, simply on the amount of, dare I say it, the amount of crap that they're producing. And that's a lot of crap, and it's a lot of additional people. So, pardon the language, but that's their estimate, that there are 600,000 people using the
sewage system.
And there should be.
Yeah, there should be. You explained it brilliantly. Henry Bolton, international security expert. Thank you for your time on this Monday night here on Talk. Well, that's some quite depressing food for thought, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. This idea that, and we often talk about the small boat crossings on the channel, right? Well documented for very good reasons. But the idea now that it's becoming more and more apparent that people are getting into this country illegally, not claiming asylum, they just want to come here for whatever reason. Also potentially weapons as well, because they're coming on board yachts. People are smuggling them in to little ports and harbours around the southwest and the southeast. Who knows where that's going to lead? 0344 499 1000. Right, we're going to talk to Michelle, we're going to talk to Steve, and you as well, next at Talk.
they found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barks. It's Talk on a Monday night. It's the evening exchange through until 10. And after 10 o'clock, the sublime Petri Hoskin is here. Let's take a call. This is Michelle in London. Good evening. Welcome to Talk.
Hi, Duncan. Thank you very much for taking my call. I'm a little bit on one today. I've been listening to the news and everything, but they're treating criminals like victims and victims like criminals. Now, Arsenal played yesterday. I'm really happy. We live in North London. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they didn't win a war. Yeah, of all these
Arsenal didn't win a war?
No, I'm saying they didn't win a war with a celebration.
Oh, understood. Yeah, no, I think we can agree on that. Go on. Yeah.
No, if they'd have gone down the beaches and stopped the boats,
yeah,
instead of everybody moaning. Now, what I wanted to, I like your voice, and I think you're really gorgeous. I mean, everyone to their own, but you are handsome. But listen,
a lot of people say that. It's very kind of you to back up that view.
If it's the TV, but like, ooh la la. But anyway, the end of the day, laws are laws, yeah?
Yeah.
And we've listened to the Rochester, the police, let down. I mean, the end of the day, it's run by the mayor, who is not English. He's a Muslim gentleman. But, you know, you've got to go with the country. Now, this with this young boy is absolutely touched my soul. It really has. It is absolutely touched my soul. I felt sick. Nobody should have the right to go around with any weapon. Me, myself and I think if you carry a weapon, you'll be shot through the head because you're there to kill somebody.
All right, there's a lot to unpack there. So first off, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, I mean, you're right, he is a Muslim, but he was born in Tooting, right? So he is British by birth, so let's just put that out there.
Yeah, I know I've put that out there. I had respect for him for once, but now I don't.
Okay.
Because I've heard a few conversations, and I'm like...
all right, but we're not here to talk about Sadiq Khan. I'm more interested in... You want to talk about shooting...
He's running the police, and the police are two-tier.
But I'm sorry, hang on, Michelle, who do you want to shoot in the head?
No, I'm saying if you carry a knife...
Yes.
You're there to do damage. You should be wounded or something. You should not carry a weapon. You're going out to do someone harm.
Understood, but the issue we have here, particularly with the murder of this young lad in Southampton, Henry Nowak, he was stabbed repeatedly, and it ended his life by a guy who had what some elements of the media are calling a Sikh blade. It's known as the kirpan, and I wasn't aware of this until I was, exploring the case. But there are legal exemptions in this country that allow people, particularly those who are Sikhs, to carry a knife because of their religious beliefs. So first off, I'm guessing, given what you said so far, you think that religious exemption should be removed. That should not be allowed.
Yeah, but we're not allowed as Christians to wear crosses. So where do we...
Well, no, that's not true. I saw someone in the newsagents earlier with a cross.
Yeah, but then you can't work in the hospital. I'm under a lot of hospitals. I don't wear my crucifix, but I have to say... No, because I don't want to be discarded. But
no, hang on. This is worth its weight in gold. Who has someone told you can't wear your crucifix?
Yes.
Who?
People who go to hospitals.
People who go to hospitals have told you not to wear your crucifix.
No, you can't. You can't.
Who says who?
You don't get treated the same.
You believe that? You believe if you had your crucifix on display?
I've seen it and I've heard people around me.
Okay.
But religion ain't. If you've got your beliefs, I've got respect for you. Everybody has got. I've got the utmost respect. But keep it to yourself, like your politics. You keep it to yourself.
Yeah, you see, the problem is, though, we now live in a time, don't we, where, my mum, who's no longer alive, used to say you should never talk about religion or politics in public or down the pub. And now, that's all people ever talk about. I mean, go to social media, that's all they ever talk about. They're all sticking up pictures of their tea. Michelle, I'm going to move it on. Thank you for your call. Thank you for your kind comments. They've done my ego the world of good. Let's go to Steve. Hello, Steve. Welcome to Talk.
Good evening, Duncan.
What would you like to say, sir?
It's just carrying on from where Pat was mentioning the triple lock in the state pension.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem we've got with the pensions is the public-related paid pensions. So your civil servants, your police, fire brigade, National Health Service, they go in, they do 30 years, they can retire and take a pension.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, they could be retired by the time they're 48. They will then get the state pension when they're 67. So they're getting two pensions, all paid for by the taxpayer. Some of the pensions are absolutely astronomical. There was one guy, I remember in the press a few months ago, got chased out of the civil service, but he went with a £245,000 pension. He will then get his state pension on top of that. The vast majority of people in this country are never, ever going to get that to retire on.
No, you make a good point. I mean, for many years, the whole argument was, and I don't think the argument stands up to scrutiny anymore, was that pay, and hear me out, because I'm about to say something that I think most Talk listeners and viewers will disagree with, but this is what the view used to be. The pay in the public sector was never as good as the private sector, so therefore it was kind of made up for you when you retire with these kind of gold-plated pensions. That has always been the argument that I've heard over the years, that of course now if you look at the figures, public pay often eclipses private sector pay, so that doesn't really work anymore. So what would you do? Would you reform pensions in the public sector?
I'd reform pensions in the public sector because, as you correctly said there, Duncan, their pay parity is now above private.
Yep.
In the public sector. Their pensions, I don't care what job they do, not interested what job they do, it should be capped at $35,000 a year. Because they're still going to get the state pension when they get to 67, which is going to give them £47,000 a year. You ask any pensioner, they'd take £47,000 a year. Be very happy to take.
They'd bite your hand off. I mean, how do you do it though, Steve? Because the unions in the public sector would just literally riot if you tried to implement that.
It isn't that. They get paid the big money. They've got to take the same risks that the Joe public have to take. If they want a big pension or they want big savings, they've got to save it out of their salaries. They've got to then go, I'm going to get a private pension as well. I'm going to invest this money myself. We've all invested in pensions. We've all done what we can. A lot of people in SERPs got absolutely stuffed with the government one, paid in for 20 years, that all collapsed. They were going to blokes that were in the 40s and females in the 40s and saying, sorry, but it's gone. You can't do that to people. They've got to get a grip of the whole pension scheme.
I think you're right. Many people will say, and I believe they're right, it's a ticking time bomb. Listen, great call, Steve. Let's talk again soon. Thank you for getting involved at Talk. I'm just going to do a few messages, if that's all right, because they're backing up, so forgive me. I'm so bad at this. I ask the messages, and I'm getting engrossed in chatting to guests and callers, and then I forget the messages, and people rightly get a little bit upset. So let me just make amends here. This is Ernie, who says, Duncan, about these yachts smuggling in migrants to quiet villages. Henry Bolton, your guest, said he brought this up about 12 years ago. That's a lot of people who have been saying for years and years, our census is massively behind the times. Everyone will tell you that there's a million more foreigners in this country than the 19% the government say are here, says Ernie. This one is from our friend MJ in Staffordshire regarding benefits and the welfare bill. Duncan, I would just like to make the following points. If people are so concerned about so much money being spent on welfare benefits, then why do we never hear about celebrities and rich people turning down the child benefit family allowance, which a parent from every family receives? Is it right to take advantage of young 16 and 17-year-olds and rip them off by taking their NI contributions from their last job's wages and then continually increasing the receiving age? 67 now for anyone born after 1961. so that they themselves, after helping others, might never receive it themselves, paid in by others. And he goes on to say, or MJ goes on to say, the state pension is ripping off people anyway because recipients will pay tax. They have already paid tax. It's a double taxation rip-off. Benefits are for different types of people, and many have paid tax for many years into our UK system. Thank you. And this one from Johanna says, the house, when we die, if it hasn't gone into paying for care, they take 40% inheritance tax. They would normally give the next generation a housing ladder start, but it's taken. How can they stop the triple lock when they bring pensions in line with Europe? France, £14,500 a year. Germany, £16,700 a year. The UK, £12,500 a year. Thank you for your messages. More of those in a few moments' time. But next, Britain's favourite travel correspondent, Simon Calder, joins me to talk about worsening air rage and drunk people on planes. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's Duncan here at Talk, the home of common sense. 0344 499 1000 is the number. I want you to get in contact over the next 20 to 30 minutes and tell me whether or not you've ever been on an aeroplane with a load of people who are really drunk. I'm not talking about just slightly tipsy, but actually very drunk, bit abusive, pain in the proverbial backside. Why? Because I'm reading about a new government proposal about abusive air passengers who could be put on a national blacklist and prevented from flying with any airline. The scheme would allow airlines to share information on disruptive passengers and potentially restrict their access to flights. This kind of reminds me, I know I keep talking about pubs whenever I'm on this station. I do like a good pub, but this reminds me of certain towns where they have a pub watch scheme. So if you have someone who's a bit of a troublemaker, a bit of an artist, right, and they kick off in a certain pub, the pub watch scheme, where most of the pubs in that town or village participate, they will just go, do you know what, old Billy Bobbins here is a pain in the backside. Do you know what, we've barred him. And all of the other pubs as part of pub watch go, we're going to bar him too because we don't want him here either. It's kind of like a version of this, isn't it? Someone who's certainly got some views on this and will tell me whether or not want to something and whether or not this government proposal could ever work is Britain's favourite travel correspondent, Simon Calder, and he joins us here on Talk. Hello, Simon.
Yeah, good evening, and a really, really good and important story to be covering because, very unfortunately, if you look at the Civil Aviation Authority statistics and indeed more globally, the International Air Transport Association, they say that yes, passenger behaviour is getting worse, and unfortunately, exactly as you were saying, if you're on an aircraft where this has happened, it is absolutely terrifying because there's no escape. And as a result of that, people are getting really, really upset, particularly families, because no family wants their younger children to see incidents of violence or just people behaving appallingly. And so there's huge amounts of support in the industry for a national database. Presumably it would be, you would only get on it if you've been prosecuted for a case of air rage. But actually, more widely, I think it's going to start a debate, possibly here on Talk, about banning alcohol completely for flying.
And that's the natural extension, isn't it, of this particular conversation. So let's break it down. Not to my knowledge, I mean, I'm not aware of any airline saying that they would favour banning alcohol on flights, but given your background and your experience, has that ever been something that's been suggested?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a number of airlines, particularly from the Islamic world, who simply do not serve alcohol, and those flights tend to be very quiet, perhaps unsurprisingly. Of course, loads of us, and I'm very much including myself in this, enjoy a drink for before a flight, during a flight as well. And if you turn up tomorrow, I can guarantee at Manchester or Gatwick or Bristol at 7 o'clock in the morning, there will be plenty of people sitting in the bar drinking lager, and then they'll probably have another one, and the vast majority of them will be fine, and they just regard it as an essential part of their holiday. But it is unfortunately causing some disruption, and it may be one of those things where the majority have to suffer because of the behaviour of a minority, simply because this is dangerous. It is distracting cabin crew from their main duties, which is ensuring everybody's safety. I mean, heaven forbid there were ever an incident where people were harmed or maybe even lost their lives as a result of air rage, but it needs to be talked about. And I'll tell you what, I did a social media survey after a recent case, and I said, okay, so who'd be in favour of banning alcohol? And look, of course it was self-selecting, but a few thousand people responded, and the majority was about 55 to 45 in favour of a ban.
You see, that's interesting. I mean, you've alluded to this already. I think a lot of people see it, understandably, as the start of their holiday. I mean, I've seen it at Gatwick Airport, and there's a well-known couple of bars in there, and people are there at 7:30 in the morning, tucking into their bacon and sausage bap or whatever they fancy, and having a couple of pints of lager. And I think for a lot of people that they see that as the beginning of their holiday, they deserve it, and I'm going to start that way. And let's be honest, it's typically not those people, I suspect, who cause the most amount of drunken behaviour. I suspect, given what I've witnessed, it's more likely to be a load of stags, on a stag do somewhere, who are downing shots at 7:30 in the morning, and that's where the trouble may begin. But I'm minded to ask you this question, because I don't know the answer to it. Do airlines make much money off the back of alcohol sales?
Oh, certainly, yes. So, I mean, let's take the price of a can of beer, probably about £5 or £6. It will probably cost them, I don't know, 50 pence to buy the thing. They pay their cabin crew a little bit of commission, which is why the cabin crew may be seen to be incentivized to serve alcohol, even if I've had too much already. But so they very much welcome it, the sales, which is one reason why Michael O'Leary, the boss of Ryanair, has said, you just got to cut down the amount of drinking at airports. It's fine on planes because we can control that. But there's a really critical aspect here, and I think it actually leads to a lot of the worst air rage incidents, and that is people who buy duty free, which you're not supposed to open until you get to the other end, but surreptitiously drink it, and they are just downing stupid amounts of spirits, and they get very out of order very quickly, as opposed to, as you say, families or group of friends having a couple of pints at Gatwick first thing in the morning. I personally wouldn't want to, but if they're going to be cheerful and happy, then that's fine. But a really serious problem, and I guess it's good to see something tackling it, but of course there are, if they decide to do it only on the basis of people who have been convicted of an offence, then actually it's not going to be a very long blacklist at all. And if they decide to do it on the basis of people who've been obnoxious, well, I'm afraid we could all probably go on that list. Obviously not you, but I probably could.
I have my moments. I need to ask you this, only because of my travels in the past, and I'm not widely travelled compared to yourself, but flying out of places like Florida or Atlanta or Malta or elsewhere, I don't see, I'm going to choose my words a little bit carefully, homegrown people from those countries at the bars in the morning. So it leads me to ask you this: is this a British thing, do you think?
Well, it's a Northern European thing.
Okay.
So I think we share quite a lot of alcohol DNA in common with the Irish, with the Scandinavians, with the Dutch, with the Germans. And yeah, probably if you were to check out a pub in Dublin Airport or in Amsterdam Schiphol at 7 o'clock in the morning, you probably see very similar scenes of people doing that. And it's I guess it's a cultural thing. We very much like our beer, and we very particularly much like our beer when we're going on holiday to the sunshine. So I mean, culturally, if you were, for instance, I mean, I've flown a fair amount in Asia, as I'm sure you have, and that always seems to be pretty calm and not actually very much drinking going on at all. And I was on a Chinese airline flying across actually from Istanbul to Sydney via Chengdu in China. It was made very clear that I was going to get either a beer or a glass of wine for the flight, and that would be it. Maybe that's the answer.
Enjoy it at a slow pace. Simon, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for your expertise and experience. Simon Corder, who we like to say is Britain's favourite travel correspondent. And you can read his latest thoughts in the Daily Telegraph newspaper and also on the Telegraph website. What a fine chap. I got a message here from Hopkins. This is interesting because I'm looking for your experiences of... well, not drunken travel, not necessarily you, unless you want to share them with me, but what you've witnessed, particularly on planes or indeed on trains. You know, James, who's producing the show, makes the point that, you know, it's not just drunken behaviour on planes. You see quite a lot of drunks on trains as well. Common denominator, you can't really get out of that place, can you? I mean, all right, it's slightly different on a plane in terms of one destination to another. A train, you might get some options to get off at the various stations, but you're still stuck, excuse my description, stuck in a big tube with people you don't want to be with. This is Hopkins, who sent a message saying, Duncan, flying from Dublin to London, I was travelling with my family and 2 young children when I nipped to the loo before boarding and ended up witnessing a very drunk passenger picking arguments with people, including me. The situation spilled outside and the Guardian were called. Thankfully, airport staff had already seen his behaviour and he was deemed too intoxicated to fly. I understand the pilot even came out to assess the situation personally and decided he didn't want that passenger on board at 30,000 feet, where it would become everyone's problem once the doors were closed. His girlfriend was also unable to travel. Credit to Dublin airport staff, the police and Ryanair for putting safety first and preventing what could have been a very unpleasant flight for passengers and crew alike. I mean, it's interesting that Simon Corder did his own little survey on social media, and there's about 55% of people were in favour of banning alcohol on planes. Give me your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000 is the number. I'm Duncan Barks, and this is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, you all know that. And thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at TalkSport are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England versus Croatia live on the 17th of June with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets and your very own Adidas official match ball Trionda. Be at England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
I'm Duncan Barks. This is Talk. I'm here through until 10. Petri Hoskin here after 10 o'clock tonight. We'll catch up with Petri in a few moments' time. In the meantime, we've been talking about whether or not there needs to be legal exemptions that allow Sikhs to carry knives, religious knives. They call it the kirpan. We have an exemption in this country that allows people to carry a knife for religious reasons or religious beliefs. Let's get a view on this. This is Tristan.
That Sikh boy carrying that knife has got absolutely nothing to do with how that boy died. He would have stabbed him with a kitchen knife, or whether it be a pair of scissors or whatever else he wanted to carry around with him. People on about banning the Sikhs carrying around that ceremonial knife is absolutely ridiculous. If you can name how many Sikhs have killed people with that ceremonial knife, that young boy would have killed that other young boy with any sharp implement that he could have carried around with him.
That's Tristan's view. If you want to get yours on air inside the next 10 minutes, 0344 499 1000 is how you contact us at Talk for your calls, your voice notes or your WhatsApp messages. Talking of calls, we'll do Fulham in a few moments, but first, this is Karen in Bournemouth. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Duncan. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. What would you like to say?
It's about the Mandelson files.
Yeah.
It confirmed what I've thought all along, that the Labour Party are buying votes with benefits. And that's why they're going up all the time, because they're not bothered about the unemployment to much extent, because they'll give them benefits and then that will keep their votes. So it's just a bribery. I mean, they're corrupt, but now that they're also bribing people.
Have you been surprised by anything that you've seen or heard in these, as we call them tonight, Mandy files, these exchanges between the disgraced peer, Peter Mandelson, and various Labour MPs? Has anything surprised you?
Not particularly, but I haven't read them through. I've seen bits and pieces and what people have been talking about. And none of it really surprises me, in that he's always been dodgy anyway. And I don't think I think that Keir Starmer's quite happy with the whole thing going on about Epstein and stuff, because I personally think that the real reason he hired Mandelson was to see if he can get dirt on Trump, but also too his connections to China and Russia, and that's why he put him there in the first place.
Well, there's certainly a view that the reason he put Mandelson in the position of US ambassador is because Mandelson is such an established player and networker, and known as the Prince of Darkness. He was probably the best man available to try and keep Trump in line. Karen, good call. Thank you. Karen in Bournemouth. This is Alex in Fulham. Hello, Alex. Welcome to Talk.
Hi, how are you, Duncan? It's lovely to be on your show.
Very kind indeed. What would you like to say?
It was with regards to the concept of with the previous guest speaker you had with regards to alcohol and airplane rage.
Yeah.
So I'm a vet. I travel. I've traveled around the world. I've been to multiple different airports, and at the end of the day, It is in aviation. There are, first of all, there aren't actually no global statistics. Just so you're aware, there are actually no global statistics that actually specifically focus on the proportion of a population consuming alcohol at 7 a.m. or beforehand, regardless of whether they're a hen or a stag do or otherwise. Data on alcohol use is generally collected in terms of daily or weekly consumption per capita intake and patterns such as heavy episodic drinking. Surveys rarely measure exact times of day when alcohol isn't consumed. So figures for early morning drinking worldwide are really legitimately not available. Now,
So just to be clear, and thank you for this, so we don't have necessarily reliable stats that are consistent, but you did make the point at the beginning of our chat that you fly quite a bit. So have you seen drunkenness on an aeroplane?
Absolutely, but this would be my next point. So, with regards to the airline industry, the reason I know is I've got several friends who are in aviation. There are international aviation protocols, notably the Tokyo Convention 1963 and the Montreal Protocol in 2014, which address unruly passenger incidents. The Tokyo Convention grants jurisdiction to the state of aircraft registration, while the Montreal Protocol in 2014 extends this to the state of landing, enhancing enforcement. Airlines and authorities collaborate to prevent and manage such incidents, which measures including clear communication for staff training and legal actions.
Understood. So let me just cut to the chase, because time's not on our side, so do forgive me. And hopefully we'll talk again later this week. We'll have more time. Couple of questions for you. Would you support the idea of a blacklist for flyers who repeatedly fly drunk?
There already is.
Okay. How far would you go then? I'm not saying necessarily one way or the other, but do you think there's an argument to reduce or not serve alcohol on flights?
There already is.
Right. Would you support a complete ban?
No, I think that's uncalled for and unjurisdictional. I think that is completely biased based off of a few individuals who have slipped through the cracks. At the end of the day, you have to remember these trainees, these people who are professionals in their area, right, who keep the rest of us safe. They have to look after how many hundreds of millions of people on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
You have to put this into perspective, right?
You do. Listen, Alex, I'm only moving it on, but please call me again later this week. We'll have plenty more time, because I'm rubbish at timekeeping. I'm going to squeeze in Will in Sussex about the TV licence. Then we'll talk to Petri Hoskin, who's here after 10. Will, what have you got to say?
Oh, hi, Duncan. Great to speak to you, actually. I don't have a TV licence. I just can't do it because I just cannot fund socialism. I hate socialism. It's disgusting. It should be banned, actually. It should be prescribed. Anyway.
That's quite a bold statement. But anyway, go on.
I mean, it's just...
So I'm interested. Tell me why you associate the BBC with socialism.
Oh, it's just constant barrage of propaganda, climate change. I mean, literally all the things that would require you to swim against the tide of human nature, they are into. I mean, can I actually, I'll just say this. Socialism has probably killed billions of people, and yet the Hiroshima bomb only killed 100,000.
Well, I don't know if socialism has. I mean, you could argue that Marxism and communism has. So I mean, I'm just going to be... So Balamory, which has just come back as the CBeebies BBC production for children, right? Is Balamory somehow socialist, the TV children's programme?
Yeah, you bet you're right. It's surreptitious, these messages there.
Give me an example of the socialism in Balamory.
Oh, God, I haven't seen Balamory.
Well, then why did you say it's full of socialism, then, if you've not watched it?
Well, anyway, what? Do you want to go back to TV licensing, anyway?
Quickly, 30 seconds, mate, go on.
OK, right. So, anyway, we had a guy come round our little house. Actually, I'm not far from you, actually, sort of near, about 5 miles from Amberley.
Right.
You'll know it. Anyway.
You must have a few quid. Go on.
No, I don't. Bangs on the door. Hello. Open it. Yep. How can I help you? I knew he was a TV licence guy. And he went, you the owner of the house? I went, yeah. He said, you don't have a TV licence? I said, I know. And then he sort of looked, he peered over my shoulder. He said, you got a TV? And I went, is it on? He went, well, he didn't say anything. I said, is it on? And he went, no. Right. Okay. There you go then. Good day to you.
Do you get a knock at the door often?
No. Do you know something? And actually, I think your listeners should know this.
Quickly.
Right. This is quick. I know we haven't got time, but I haven't had a TV. I went on the TV licence website and we ticked all the boxes and said we don't want one. We don't watch la 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 TVs, live streaming, all that kind of nonsense. Now, last year, the Wimbledon final, my friend Julian Cash is in the men's doubles, and my wife went on her iPad and watched iPlayer.
Yes.
I reckon that must have a location thing. She signed in to watch the Wimbledon because we wanted to watch our mate play in the final. And, 5 days later, bang on the door.
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, I think that would have logged you somewhere. Listen, Will, going to move it on, but let's talk again soon. That's Will in Sussex. The sublime and divine Petri Hoskin is here after 10. How are you?
Why, thank you very much. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all right. Getting away with it, you know.
Well, you're a newbie.
Yeah.
I've not done this sort of stuff
No,
before.
I haven't. I have no idea what's going on.
No idea what you're doing.
What's happening after 10?
What's happening after 10? We're going to dig into the Mandy files, of course. There's some really embarrassing, awkward and embarrassing. I mean, if you were caught with those messages, unbelievable.
Yeah.
And an astonishing number of phones that were stolen.
I know, I know, isn't it? What's happening with all of these phones?
I don't know.
Where's my phone gone?
It's gone.
Hello, I'm a Labour politician. I'm waving a phone. Where are you? I happen to be in a dodgy street in London. Well, be careful, someone might cycle past and nick it. No, my phone's gone.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Honestly, you couldn't make it up. You really couldn't. Looking at that. Also, we're going to be heading to Cuba to see what Trump has done to Cuba. Yeah. It's an extraordinary... And a lot of people warning this is not Venezuela. This is not going to be just as easy as Venezuela, even though he's plotting exactly the same thing. And then we're going to be talking about reckless cycling, as in the Netherlands. They are testing a strict 12 miles per hour speed